Could you do them? Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. First today, we have our awards and recognition, and we have this wonderful recognition of our Sunrunner Bus Rapid Transit Service to be presented by PSTA Sustainability Planner, Nicole Dufa. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Nicole Dufa, and I'm a senior planner, and as PSTA's sustainability champion, I get to come up here today and share with you some really exciting and great news about an amazing award that the Sunrunner received earlier this month from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. The Resiliency Coalition is a program of the Regional Planning Council comprised of over 20 members from our local governments spanning 6 counties, and every municipality represented here on our board has signed on to this coalition. The coalition has been recognizing excellence in the region for over 29 years with the Future of the Region Awards. The awards highlight projects and programs that exemplify regionalism and recognize outstanding achievements and contributions that benefit the local and our regional community. And the Sunrunner didn't just receive any award, it received the highest honor. The biggest and best cheese, as Brad might say, the One Bay McIntosh Award of Distinction. The award is presented to an organization that embodies the principles of the One Bay Livable Communities vision, which outlines priorities for responsible land use, mobility, economic and environmental sustainability for population and employment growth in our region. The Sunrunner won this award for the many reasons that we've shared with you all since its launch. To date, over 635,000 rides have been taken on the Sunrunner. With 50,000 jobs and 40,000 people within a half mile of the route, the Sunrunner travels one of the county's most transit-heavy corridors and serves key destinations in St. Petersburg, South Pasadena, and St. Pete Beach, such as USF St. Pete, Tropicana Field, the many restaurants, retail shops, and commercial districts along the route, as well as our beautiful award-winning beaches. As our county continues to grow and be a major tourist destination with new residents moving here every day, providing robust transit services like our Sunrunner is critical for the health and sustainability of our community and our local economy. Receiving this award demonstrates this importance, and we love to see it. It was also great to see our board members who attended the awards luncheon earlier this month, thanks to Commissioner Flowers, Mayor Saraki, Commissioner Robinson, and Commissioner Gao. And a little later on today's agenda, you will hear more about how we are planning to improve the service to serve more people and further drive the economic impact of the Sunrunner. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have our award right here in front of you.
All right, next we'll go to public comment for consent agenda items or items that are not on today's agenda. For those who would like to speak on any of the action items, we'll give you the opportunity once that item is taken up. I do have some, if you would like to speak, please fill out one of the green cards and hand it to Maureen. I do have some here already. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes. My apologies in advance for having a little trouble reading the names on some of the cards here, but I'm going to give it my best shot. If you hear something that sounds like your name and you have filled out a green card, yeah, we'll just take it from there. Thanks. Our first speaker is Holly Noah.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here today, and congratulations on your award. My name is Holly Noah. I am a Pinellas County resident, a business owner, a taxpayer, and a concerned citizen. I'm here today because I want to share with you a really new common word that we've heard a lot over the last few years, reimagine. I want to encourage PSTA to reimagine your spending and system efficiency. Rather than spending more, spending less. When there's been, and Sunrunner, great presentation there, but there's been a 40% decline over the last decade in PSTA ridership. Less than 2% of Pinellas County residents take a ride on a PSTA bus every day. And yet, the budget and the number of employees for PSTA has increased over that same period. I'd encourage you, like I have to do on a daily basis as a business owner, think more like a for-profit business than a government that wastes taxpayer money. Maybe pay a dividend back to the citizens when you have an excess in your budget, which means finding more efficient means of transport and my time is almost up, sorry. More efficient means of transport for the less than 16,000 daily riders on PSTA buses. That is the overall of my comments that you'll be hearing from me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Can you help me with this one? I think it's Morgan. Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. Thank you.
I had the same problem in school, first day of school. Teachers. My name is Muneen Bongards, and I live in Seminole. And as a concerned citizen and stakeholder in this operation, I'm here today to address the issue of your continued purchase of expensive electric buses. Although many people believe that they're reducing greenhouse gas emissions by buying battery-powered electric vehicles, the facts might surprise you. Studies show that the electricity needed to recharge these batteries is mostly generated by low-efficiency coal and natural gas-fired power plants. It turns out that the total greenhouse gas emissions are not much less for battery electric vehicles than for gasoline-powered vehicles. In fact, studies show greenhouse gas emissions associated, the emissions associated with the mining and the recycling of lithium batteries is considerably more than that generated by the production of gasoline engines. Specifically, a typical battery-powered electric car battery weighs 1,000 pounds. Now, a bus battery, of course, would weigh more. It contains lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, copper, aluminum, steel, and plastic. Generally speaking, all these materials come from mining. All told, you need to dig up almost 500,000 pounds of earth crust to make one electric car battery. Moreover, the majority of the world's cobalt comes from the Congo. Their mines have no pollution controls, and they employ children who die from handling this toxic material. And besides that, China owns the mines. And that's just to produce the battery. The end of life of lithium batteries is another story altogether. Lithium batteries cannot be economically recycled at this time, and it requires lots of greenhouse gas producing energy while dealing with the toxic chemicals. So, while battery-powered electric vehicles, like buses, may have some good attributes, they still have problems with cost, weight, battery life expectancy, and like in Florida, the potential of hurricane-caused power outages can influence the process of evacuation. The lithium batteries have been shown to be susceptible to thermal runaway, leading to 200,000 documented fires and explosions, more than 1,500 injuries, and $1.6 billion in property damage worldwide. Finally, the future replacement for gasoline and diesel fuels is not the use of batteries. Rather, it's hydrogen fuel, made from water, and the electricity generated from by hydrogen fuel cells. In fact, hydrogen fuel cells would be a better choice for future PSTA bus purchases. Please do not spend any more taxpayer money on soon-to-be obsolete battery electric buses. The world has gone to hydrogen. all
Thank-
over Europe.
thank
The
you.
buses are hydrogen. And just saw an announcement yesterday that Frankfurt, Germany, all hydrogen buses.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Harry, the last name starts with S. Thank you.
Yeah, I've came to see about getting some route changes for 23,
Thank you. If you
15.
could, I'm sorry, if you could please state
from
your
Largo,
name and
Florida.
address for the
My
record.
address is 3718 138th Avenue North, Largo, Florida. And see about getting some route changes for about 23, 14, and 15. I went out to St. Pete looking for the Echo Fest, and I couldn't find it, so I decided to go out to Gulfport, past the park, ended up at Beach Park on the 15, but there's no way I knew that it went down one way and turned. I like to see that route change so it goes straight back up to Gulfport and then head back to St. Pete. And I can see all the bus schedules had the same time period at the end when they get in a line just like 59. And then I was trying to get something from someone, buy something from Facebook, and next thing I'm taking 14, it goes to the hospital, and you have to pay a fare again. You don't have to do that in Tarpon Springs. You know, so I like to see these changes made to make it easier for people to travel on our buses. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Doreen McKinnon.
Good morning. I'm Doreen McKinnon. My address is 6294 60th Avenue North in St. Pete. And I would like to address today the fact that St. Petersburg's First Avenues North and South were originally switched into one-way streets in order to expedite traffic into and out of the downtown area. The city council at the time acknowledged the need to support the downtown area businesses and alleviate traffic congestion in order to keep the downtown vibrant. Unlike the current city council and certain county commissioners and too many PSTA board members, commandeering the lanes from vehicular traffic has turned First Avenues North and South into a clown show. Further, the change now expedites a free ride from luxury apartments and condos downtown to and from the beach at the expense of drivers who not only pay for the roadways they are denied use for, but also pay for the free rides as well. In addition, it has not gone unnoticed that buses do not need a boarding platform, and that the lane used to give preferential treatment to the Sunrunner bus is only used every 15 to 20 minutes throughout the day. If this is the best that PSTA and Brad Miller can provide to the residents of Pinellas County, most of whom will never get their free ride to and from the beach, we need better leadership. I am hoping that the new board will provide that leadership and get rid of the dedicated lanes at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Barb Hazelton.
Good morning, my name is Barbara Hazelton, and 1043 31st Terrace Northeast, St. Pete. And some of you may or may not know that I was the organizer of No Tax for Tracks during the Greenlight Project 2010 through 2014. And I came to meetings in this room for 4 years without fail, and to committee meetings in order to stay on top of the actual numbers and metrics of this organization, because we, at the referendum in 2014, we won with the support of 62% of the entire voting citizenry of Pinellas County to 38% against the last idea like this. And that was because of the numbers, because I gave 200 presentations that year and debates. I think, Jim, you remember me at the St. Pete College. And I did my debates through using PSTA's own budget numbers because they're so damning. And so it's easy for me to get caught back up on the numbers in order to be here today. Because our property taxes in 2013 were 32 million, 2022, 61 million, almost double. PSTA has 15,000 passengers, or roughly 1.65% of the population, and that really hasn't changed, except the population has gone up. Each passenger will transfer 1 to 2 or even 3 times to reach their destination. I found this out through the bus study that was done in 2014. And so each person who has to go, for instance, to the mall, they might get on and off 2 or 3 different times. And each one of those rides have a cost of about anywhere from $8 to $10. So when you add up those transfers, that's how the true cost of a rider, not a ride, but a passenger. So when everything's referred to as rides, it's not passengers or people, it's how many times they get on and off, called unlinked fares, unlinked rides. There's been a 40% drop over the last 10 years of ridership, not because of COVID. In 2014, the ridership was 14 million. And then 15, 14 million, 16, 12 million, 17, 11 million, 18, 11 million, 19, 11 million, 2020, 10 million, 2021, 9.8 million, which was during the year of COVID. And it's easy to blame COVID, but you can see this as a trend that has gone on sustained all of these years. And 2022, 8.46 million people. So it has gone from 14 million to 8 million. That is hard numbers of people that are customers that has fallen for various reasons. Other metrics include the number of buses went in 2013 from 194 to currently 213, and we're just ordering all these electric buses. The number of bus routes remain pretty much unchanged, 40 to 41. Employees, 591 to 661, and the highest paid in the state. Good for them. Bus passenger miles, 2013, bus passenger miles, 67 million,
If you could wrap up.
48 million.
We're over 3 minutes.
Okay, so what did you say?
If you could wrap up, please.
Oh, thank you very much. So every metric is up except ridership, 40% drop in the ridership. And so now all they want to talk about is the Sunrunner, the
All right,
squirrel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, did we have any other cards for this public comment section? All right, these are both for upcoming agenda items, so you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. All right, now we'll go to our consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member wishes to pull from the consent agenda? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If you could please open the voting system. Commissioners, please enter your votes. The person who moved approval was Commissioner Fig Sanders. All right. Is it noted who the actual person who made the motion was? Okay. Thank you. The motion passes. We'll move next to our committee updates, and we'll start with our track update from Bob Lasher, followed by Commissioner Reed with the local coordinating board report, and then I will present the Forward Pinellas update.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our track Transit Rider Advisory Committee Chair and Vice Chair are on vacation this month, so I've been drafted. The track met via Zoom Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Director of Transportation Greg Bracken and Manager of Safety Security Training Theo Bacamihalis gave the track an impressive presentation on PSTA's hurricane planning, preparations, and operations. As you can imagine, preparing an agency of this size for a natural disaster or emergency is a never-ending and very demanding process. As those leaders took the track through the plans and how the agency has handled storms in the past, it was easy to see why PSTA's Safety, Security, and Training Department is one of the most highly decorated groups of its kind in the entire country. The foundation for the agency's emergency response is adaptability and flexibility. Since no two incidents are the same, the variables that might affect our agency response include the nature of the emergency, county evacuation levels, requests for special transportation from emergency management. Does the fleet need to be relocated to higher ground? What conditions are the roadways in after the events, and staff availability? Committee members were very impressed with the presentation and PSTA's approach and engaged in a robust discussion about the storm response and how the agency has successfully dealt with previous storms. The next track meeting will be Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, 4 o'clock upstairs in the auditorium. As always, you are all welcome to attend. Any questions? Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Reed? Oh, okay. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. My updates for the May 2023 Local Coordinating Board. The Local Coordinating Board met on May 16th in downtown Clearwater. Robert Fiegel with Ford Pinellas reviewed the grievance procedure and updates to TD program operators and coordination contractors incorporated into the TD Service Plan Annual Update. PSTA's Ross Silvers then reviewed the new rate model. All of these documents were unanimously approved by the LCB. Rob and Ross then provided a requested presentation covering all of the TD and ADA rider targeted services. LCB members identified potential improvements on the TD side, including changing to a more positive name, approving a fully online application process, and seamless utilization of different TD services as needed. These ideas will be developed and brought to future LCB meetings for approval. The next LCB meeting will take place on September the 15th at 9:15 a.m.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, for the Forward Pinellas update, the board met in person on April 12th, 2023. The board adopted performance measures and targets, as well as a transportation improvement program amendment that, among other projects, included PSTA's solar-powered zero-emission bus and facility project. The staff and the board discussed the Pinellas Planning Council's FY24 preliminary budget, which will be brought back to the board in July as an action item to approve the FY24 millage rate and the budget. The staff brought back alternatives of the Fort Pinellas apportionment plan, and after thorough discussion, it was decided that the item would be brought to the board in July as an action item. The board and the staff also welcomed Mayor David Will, who will be representing the beach communities on this board. The next Forward Pinellas board meeting will be held on June 14th, 2023. Next, we'll have our action items, taking up item 6A, the Strategic Communications Contract. This contract was recommended for approval by the Finance Committee. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
There we go. Okay. Good morning. So, as Chair Driscoll just mentioned, this is a contract with Catalyst Communications to provide strategic communications or otherwise public relations. This was presented, and we had a good discussion at the Finance Committee. They recommended it for your approval today. They asked that we give it a discussion at the board meeting today. It's a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options with Catalyst Communication for a total over those 5 years not to exceed $390,000. For as long as I've worked at PSTA, for the last at least 10 years, PSTA has had a strategic communications consultant as one of our 2 consultants related to communications. We have a marketing firm on contract that does sort of advertising, sort of develops creative posters and things when we have a new program, or to get the word out on something when we do advertising. And then we have a strategic communications or public relations firm that focuses on the regular media, getting stories in the newspaper or on TV to get the word out about our services, to handle crisis communications, and also to provide some services I'm going to talk about. The Finance Committee had a lot of discussion and asked me to sort of articulate to you what the value, at least what that I see, in a strategic communications consultant, in what Catalyst provides to us. Like I said, they help us get stories in the media about PSTA initiatives. They handle crisis communications and also help us plan and develop press events. They also help us save money rather than hiring our own staff to do several functions. One, there's a software program that they provide to us within their price that PSTA had previously been paying $17,000 a year for media monitoring. So we're taking that out of our budget when we approve this. Second, we are no longer going to have a on-staff videographer, which, including benefits, is definitely over $270,000 over the 5 years. So when you add those two together, it's a relatively close to cost neutral proposal, and something I would certainly recommend. I think is an essential piece of what we do to communicate with the public. Catalyst, and I want to introduce Mr. Preston Rudy and some of his team. Preston, if you want to stand, you guys want to stand up? They are here. He is the CEO of Catalyst. We've had a really good relationship with them for the last several years, and I put on the screen just several of the initiatives that they helped us do. All transportation organizations have had a real challenge coming out of the pandemic with keeping enough bus drivers on staff. In the transit world, this is a serious problem. Even in the school bus world, Pinellas County Schools is very short on drivers. PSTA is not short on bus operators, and that was largely due to a great media campaign that we did about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, where we invited all these TV reporters to come to PSTA to drive a bus. And lots of TV reporters, thanks to Catalyst's help getting them here, drove a bus around the parking lot in a very safe way, and did stories about how PSTA was hiring bus drivers. And that generated a huge number of applications, something like over a 50% increase in the number of applications we got within the next month. A rider found a wallet on a bus with $5,800 on it, and Catalyst was helpful in getting a human interest story published about that, because with the driver's help, the wallet found its way back to its rightful owner. That was great. Commissioner Albritton was here. He would note that Catalyst helped us help clarify some issues that came about last summer with the Clearwater Transit Center and some miscommunication that happened there. We had a fantastic launch to our Sunrunner service with very positive media stories for the first month of operations. Just this past legislative session, there were lots of questions being fielded by local media about what is going on in Tallahassee with this bill that originally was to merge PSTA and HART together and then changed over the legislative session. The local media, we used Catalyst to really assist with us in trying to answer their questions, trying to explain what was going on in Tallahassee, and ultimately we had very positive stories, and ultimately then the bill got changed to take PSTA out of the legislation. And finally, the last 3 chairs of PSTA have had letters to the editor, they've written letters to the editor that Catalyst has helped get submitted and included in the newspaper. The Finance Committee also asked me to present some metrics on how we evaluate the success, how successful this has been. And we do have some metrics that kind of gauge this. One is this monitoring of media stories. In the past 4 years of working with Catalyst, partnering with them, we've had nearly 3,400 total stories in the media. You can see by year that the value of that earned media, the number of people seeing it, has increased every single year, and that speaks to the great partnership that we've had with this company. The other way in which we can kind of track whether or not having a strategic communications consultant is a benefit to PSTA is by community sentiment. And we do a phone survey. We're actually doing our phone survey for the first time in 4 years right now. It's going on right now, and we'll have that information. The last survey, back in 2019, had very positive results about the general public's view of public transportation services in Pinellas County. And these are non-riders, so how do they get that view? Mostly through the media and things that they hear or see. And that is the key value of having a strategic communications. So the combination of it's certainly providing a strong value to PSTA, plus the savings that we're able to generate within our own budget by contracting out this service, makes me recommend to approve this 2-year plus 3-year option contract with Catalyst Communications. And the Finance Committee can certainly chime in, but they recommended the same.
Great. Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Schulman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, the Finance Committee, we did talk about this a good bit, and I appreciate some of the additional detail that I had asked for. Question about the monitoring software, $17,000 a year. Is that just, do they provide analysis as well to the media information we get, or is it just the data that they collect?
It does provide a whole bunch of different reports, and it does analyze using algorithms the tenor of the stories, like they rate them positive, negative, neutral, things like that. Pretty much anything you can probably think of, it does, yeah.
So, but is Catalyst providing analysis on that data? So,
Yes.
So this data comes in, and then they're sharing back what that means to us.
Every month, we kind of do a summation of the last month and then looking ahead to the future. Yeah.
Okay, and you talked about the elimination of a need for a videographer.
Yes.
Do we currently have a full-time videographer?
We do in the budget, and at this exact minute, we do not. The person left to move away, and so it's currently vacant, but we're not going to keep that position filled. We're going to eliminate that position for the next fiscal year.
Okay, so it was a position, and it's currently in the budget to be hired, but we're not, in this scenario, seeking a
Right.
new videographer. Okay.
Right.
And I also just wanted to mention, I mean, something we covered in the Finance Committee is that the contract value, it is a 20% increase from the prior contract, right? So we went from 60,000 in our past strategic communications contract to 72,000. And something I brought up at the Finance Committee meeting is that I was, and then it keeps stepping up from there. I was a little concerned about the 5-year contract and preferred potentially just having a 2-year contract and keeping the options with the board in year 3 as opposed to referring that back. So that's not necessarily a question, that's just a comment for board members. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I'm just pretty much a results-oriented individual. So for me, if we're spending money, it needs to equate to rides. And, you know, since we've been using, PR firms for a long period of time, but I don't see that translating to more rides. I mean, public sentiment is wonderful. 96% support the use of tax dollars to improve the county's public transit, but 98% don't use the service. So public sentiment is one thing, but if it's not equating to public behavior, I mean, I'm just not seeing the return on investment there. So, in my industry, a $6,000 a month, that would basically be a salary for a salesperson, which that person is going to be expected to generate 3.5 to 4 million plus in sales. And I just don't really see that happening here. So, I'm just, bottom line, is ridership going up or is it going down? And it hasn't been going up. So I would propose that we just take a break for a year on this and just see what happens with ridership. I would think that we would be able to handle most of this stuff in-house. So, just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott, and I'm not sure if there was a question in there. I will just say that, as we talked about in our workshop less than a month ago, we are a public agency that does need to monitor. We certainly want to monitor our ridership levels and are always looking to increase ridership. But we have a lot of other stakeholders because we're a governmental agency. I think if we don't have a positive public relations, if we don't have positive sentiment in the community, I believe that could result in a decline in ridership. I think it does have a related effect, especially our services for tourists and spring break and things like that. If you look not too far away, maybe 10 miles across the bay, at an agency that has a lot of problems with public relations and whether their ridership is being affected, it could. Is it happening now? I don't know. But I think it is a risk to have an agency that does not have good relationships with the community and have an effect on ridership.
And I'm not suggesting that we don't have good relations with the general public and the media. I'm just saying that I'm not sure that this is a good use of taxpayer dollars when I think a lot of this stuff we should be able to handle in-house.
All right, thank you. Brad, you've spelled out the cost here versus what we would save, or what we would not be spending.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a small gap there between the two. If we were to do things in-house, we would eliminate that, and we'd have, about $45,000 left. Considering the amount of time that it would take for our in-house teams to produce the kinds of results, initiatives, materials that are currently being done by our partner, I'm not sure that we would save. I think it would actually cost us more because we would have to have that full-time videographer, and we would probably have to hire another person in marketing to really fill in what's missing from not having this partnership.
It's possible, yes. Certainly we would contract out with different videographers for different events and things like that. We'd have more expenses than just the staff. Even if we didn't hire our own videographer, we would need to contract with that,
Right.
with a different party. But yeah, no doubt, we would just do less. We would have to do a lot less ability. But we do have one person on staff that does a great job, but that works with Catalyst. We're partners with Catalyst on interacting with the media, answering questions, meeting with the media, planning events, things like that. So it is sort of an additive service. If we didn't have it, we certainly would have less coverage, I would say.
And yeah, when you look at this slide that lists the variety of services and assistance that we get from Catalyst right now, I don't see how one person who's currently on staff could take on that much more work. So it looks to me like it would actually cost us more to do this in-house than it would to work with a partner, especially at the level of quality of that service that we receive. I have not heard of any issues that we've had with the team at Catalyst and the exposure that they've been able to assist us with has helped us to reach a wide audience. We know that these days people take in information and news in a variety of different ways, and you have to have your message at the right place, at the right time, and targeted to the individuals, and that's working right now. And without that, I would be very concerned about how much work it would take for us to try to do the same thing and get the same results in-house. And with the relationships and the network that Catalyst has, I don't think we would get there. I don't think even if we added a person, there is something to be said for the solid relationships that this partner has. And so I'm fully supportive of moving forward with this, with the 2-year contract. With the options, I think we should revisit it before we go into the 1-year option, and just make sure that we are, that we have the right team in place for the right moment a couple of years from now, because we do have a lot of changes that we're doing with, Sunrunner, see how that progresses, and just see what our needs are and how this partnership is going at that point. So I appreciate the work that they've done, and I think they're providing something that we can't do on our own without spending a lot more money. So, thank you. I'm sorry, I was speaking, and so I don't know who had hit their button to speak first, but we'll go to Commissioner Figgs Sanders.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. So, as I listened, and I did not attend the Finance Committee meeting, but my sentiment on comparison of what we're doing and trying something new always weighs on me as to community input and community impact. The first thing I would like to recommend is I appreciate the telephone survey of non-riders, but I don't think that is substantial enough to actually adequately understand why they're non-riders. So when it comes to marketing, when it comes to public relations, if we are going to improve the transparency of those that are non-riders, I would just appreciate just a little bit more intentionality in getting their feedback. When it comes to the 2-year contract, I thoroughly agree and really do respect that recommendation to go to the 2-year. There's a lot of things that we internally would not see that an external contractor would. I am all about the transparency. Yes, I want to be fiscally responsible, but more importantly, I want to make sure that the community is involved and that we do not miss an opportunity to provide a service. It's not going to take overnight. We're not going to be able to adequately assess and change the minds of what public transportation is. We use the Sunrunner sometimes like it's a bad word, but there are a lot of people that actually use Sunrunner that visits us here.
You can
that,
listen to the full article as a premium member.
Okay, so I'll wait.
Could you hold for a moment, please?
Visit tampabaybusinessjournal.com/listen. Hillsborough Pasco property tax revenues up over 100% in last 10 years. By Henry Queen, reporter. Tampa Bay business.
Multitasking taken to the nth degree.
Their property tax revenue increased by over 104% in the last 10 years.
Carlos?
To a new county level report from the Florida.
Sorry about that.
No, I want to hear more.
It's actually pretty good, but.
Okay, so I'll reclaim my time. So with that being said, I do support the 2-year, but in moving forward with that partnership, I want to make sure that we get those areas that we miss. And internally, it's hard to see a mistake if you're the one that made it. It's hard to see the gap if you're the one that created it. And generally, when you move outside with partnerships, they can tell us where we need to improve in marketing. Marketing and PR is one of the most important things you can have as a business owner, business venture. If no one knows what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you're trying to impact the areas that you're serving, then why do it? So I am going to support this, but again, I want to be a little bit more intentional about who we market to. A telephone survey, if I'm a non-writer and I see a number that I don't recognize, I'm not going to answer your survey. I'm not going to answer the call. So I think changing the minds and changing the culture of what public transportation is should be one of our major focuses. And if this partnership has actually done that, I'm not going to recreate the wheel, but then again, I don't want to do the same thing as we always done and expect different results. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Latvala?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and then a comment. A question for you, Brad. Is it unusual for an agency like ours to have an outside PR firm?
No. No. Most of the other transit agencies our size or even a little bit smaller in Florida have a firm like some kind of firm like this. It's very common. The list of clients that Catalyst has is many public organizations around the Tampa Bay area. I think they're even in discussions with working with some of the cities in Pinellas as well. So this is very, very common.
So, thank you for that. And the comment that I have is I've known, and I guess full disclosure, I've known Preston for a number of years. And he's done work for me from time to time during my legislative career. On different bills that I had and different projects that I needed to get media attention for. One example that I can think of off the top of my head was there was a tragedy in the fall of 2017 in Largo where a precious 2-year-old baby named Jordan Beliveau was murdered by his mother. And I wanted to change the child welfare laws in Florida because it was very obvious that his case was not a rare one with kids that had slipped through the cracks in the child welfare system, and there were several other cases in the Tampa Bay area. And Preston was able to generate media attention in Tampa Bay and helped me write op-eds and get enough interviews in the Tampa Bay media market and outside of Tampa Bay. We did some things in South Florida because the first year the bill died in the legislature. The second year we focused on the South Florida media market where some legislators had blocked it the year before. Needless to say, the second year we had shamed enough people that it passed unanimously. And so I know and have known a number of communications people throughout my years in public service and in politics. And I would certainly put Preston at the top of that list, and I would wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Thank you. Brad, this might be for you or maybe Debbie. I'm not sure who can answer this question. So we're looking at the videographer that we have in the budget this year. That's total of about $54,000 a year. Is that all inclusive of that person's entire salary, meaning insurance, or is that just the annual salary?
That's the annual salary. There would be benefits on top of that.
Which would increase the cost of that person?
It would. It would.
Okay. Second question is for the $17,000 for the annual media monitoring software. Is that something that we currently use? Or that PSTA currently uses, or is it something that the agency is providing us in their current contract?
We have budgeted for it, and we have a license. We've been paying it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's in the budget.
Yes.
The $17,000 a year is in the budget, so that would go away.
That goes away.
Oh, as well. All right. So that's where we get to, as the chair spoke about earlier, about a $45,000 difference over the contract. Okay. I think the last question I have is for the reporting that we are getting, or that PSTA is now receiving for the media monitoring services as far as the impressions and those types of things. Are we privy to that? Is the board privy to that? Or would we be able to see that on a monthly basis and
Yeah. Oh,
continue to, see what those impressions are and kind of help us guide our decisions moving forward?
Certainly. I think we have been sort of showing them from time to time with various events we've done. On that Sunrunner presentation, I think we got about 2 months ago, the 6 months, we had some information from, impressions and things like that. I know we talked about the bus driver hiring campaign because we won awards for that and everything, so yeah.
And I appreciate that, and I think, I think it would be good for the board to be able to see that in a standard report monthly as you receive it. Just so, again, it can help us guide our decisions as far as, I think some of the conversation I've heard today is that I think we agree with the contract for the 2-year, or some of the conversation has been for the 2-year contract, and then maybe the 3-year options after that, maybe bringing that back to the board instead of just allowing the director to have that discretion. So, again, if that's the path that we move forward, definitely having that reporting on hand could help make some of those decisions, I think. So that's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I'd actually like to make that motion, that we approve the recommendation as it's stated, with the exception that the 3-year options come back to the board as opposed to being retained with the chief executive.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And seeing that we have no further requests from the board to speak, we'll go to our public comment. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board, and if you could please state your name and address for the record. The first speaker is Janae Schmidt.
Hi, my name is actually Jen Schmidt. I live at 5700 47th Avenue North, Kenneth City, Florida. I've lived in Pinellas County almost 30 years, and I actually work in marketing. And I'm just a little surprised that it seems like the board is in favor of this initiative, because it seems like there's no ROI, return on investment, for this initiative. It's kind of like a Lamborghini, right? They do not advertise because everyone wants their services. So if people don't want your services or don't find a need for it, or the services don't line up for the needs that they have, it doesn't matter how much advertising you throw in their face or that you put out there. I'm sorry, but people just aren't going to buy it. So I really think that this board should reconsider signing the contract, because I think that there are a lot of capable residents in Pinellas County, as we've mentioned, that can be able to take up some of these efforts. I also think that if you don't have a videographer currently on staff, maybe you just don't need one. I don't know, right? My friend actually does a lot of your advertising, and he makes a lot of money. And I just think that we just don't need another video talking about the Sunrunner and how great it is, or another video talking about PSTA and how many benefits it provides when it doesn't provide benefits for more than 2% of Pinellas County residents. So just as a concerned resident, I just wanted to come up and just voice my disapproval of the contract, and just to urge you guys to please, I know that we're thinking about people in high-rise condos. I know that we're thinking about people that we want to move from the beaches into downtown St. Pete. We've already ruined downtown St. Pete. It is ridiculous. Like I said, I've been here a very long time. I used to love my city. I used to love going downtown. I cannot get anywhere. It's not because of the amount of buses. It is because the infrastructure has not adapted, and we keep on building larger and larger buildings that cannot accommodate. So I just feel like we need to reimagine what we're doing here and rethink PSTA in general, and I think that it starts with cutting additional expenses that are unwarranted. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Roseanne Nielsen.
Thank you. My name is Roseanne Nielsen, 7703 39th Avenue North, and I appreciate the presentation, but I'm quite confused, actually. My understanding is that STA is a service provider and a governmental agency that provides services to the citizens of Pinellas County. And why there's a need for $390,000 to promote the services of a government agency is not understood by me. And I think the key word that I heard was media stories. And if the agency is providing service to 2% of the citizens, then I don't know why we have to create stories to make everybody else feel good about it. A couple other questions. The contract I heard is a 20% increase from $60,000 to $72,000. I don't know if anybody in this room has gotten a 20% increase in their income. So I don't know how you justify that. And also, this is one company. Have bids gone out? And who are the 3 other providers that you've gotten any proposals from? And I agree with the prior speaker. If you don't have a return on investment, then you're not being a service provider for the citizens of Pinellas County. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Holly Noah.
Hi again, Holly Noah, 811 Placido Way Northeast, St. Pete. Based on LinkedIn, you have a comms and PR manager, a digital marketing coordinator, a director of communications and marketing, a marketing project manager, and a videographer already on staff. 100% agree that stories and earned media, it's impressive. When you look at those numbers, it's very impressive. But at the end of the day, it's about return on investment. It's about improving ridership. And I will also add that pay-for-play media, and in this case, I'll call it gaslighting, the 100% positive stories on Sunrunner, just like the First Lady just said, I guarantee you, had you actually talked to St. Pete residents like myself, we're not happy. Positive PR be damned. We're not happy because First South and First North are congested messes. So I think spending taxpayer dollars, additional taxpayer dollars, 20% more in this new contract is a waste of our money, and especially when it's not increasing ridership. Ridership is down 40% over the last 10 years. If that's coordinated with or in alignment with the number of years that we've had Catalyst on board, perhaps we should think about that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gisela Laubitz.
Sorry, Gisela Laubitz, 1432 Durling Drive South, South Pasadena, Florida. Full-time resident and homeowner. I'm speaking against the renewal of the Catalyst contract. If the competency supposedly required from Catalyst cannot be found within your team or your management team, leadership team, whatever you want to call yourself, then maybe it is time for this board to take a closer look and review the competence of the CEO of this organization. Maybe it is time to bring a change there, to bring the efficiency and bring ridership up. The contract should not be renewed.
Thank you. The next speaker, I'm going to mess it up again, Morjean. Thank you.
Yes. Hi again, Muneen Bongards. I live in Seminole. And since I have not received a phone call from your survey, I would like to just give you my very frank opinion of a letter that I saw in the Seminole Beacon several weeks ago, the headline of which was, "Let's just make the Sunrunner Rapid Transit bus free, period." And I thought, how much is this going to cost me? It goes on to say, the author goes on to say, making Sunrunner free would continue to build the Sunrunner brand. And I thought, no kidding. Increase ridership, no kidding. and further establish the service remains easy to use and accessible to everyone, writes St. Pete Council member Gina Driscoll. It neglected to mention that Ms. Driscoll is also the chairman of the PSTA board. So she's tooting her own horn here. By most any measure, Sunrunner is off to a great start as Tampa Bay's first rapid transit system. And goes on to say, the PSTA just voted in February to extend free fares for additional 6 months. And I thought, yeah, to cover the off-season when nobody is going to be riding.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. This is actually about the strategic communications
Well, I'm getting to
contract.
that.
Okay.
My point
I just want to make
is-
sure.
Yes,
Thank you.
my point is that whoever wrote this for you, needs to be fired. It is so sappy. I could go on. I'm sure you all read it too. I mean, it's just full of all the buzzwords of, sustainability and all the DEI kind of stuff, and that people are just so sick of hearing. And you're actually paying money for this kind of PR? Doesn't appeal to me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Barbara Hazelden.
Barbara Hazelden, 1043 31st Terrace, Northeast St. Pete. Well, the purpose of the board is oversight. It's not to circle the wagons when being challenged about things that don't make any sense. And I watch the meetings online. I know there's some pushback, but then other people will be sure they pull the people back in. And that is very dangerous for a public agency. Now, a couple, 3 years ago, there was a bill in the Florida Congress legislature to make it illegal to spend public tax dollars on things like lobbyists. And that didn't get anywhere because there is such a crossover between politicians and public agencies and the players that are in the marketplace, such as the crisis management PR firms that have very influential people that are a part of the staff, such as Tim Nickens, who just joined the Catalyst Communications after 13 years of being the voice of St. Pete Times, now known as Tampa Bay Times. Very influential people that with a phone call can make things happen. That's great, but you're using our money to do this, and the ridership is down 40%. You're marketing to the wrong people. You need to be marketing to the people who need a ride. So many people here originally got on this board thinking that what they were going to do was to assist the people that need transit in our county. But instead, I've been in marketing all my life. Now we're marketing people living in high-rises. Don't kid yourself. And when you look at lobbyists, this agency pays also another $420,000 contract. I did a public records request. PSTA has 2 lobbyists, a state lobbyist, a federal lobbyist. That's how you got the Sunrunner through, because the taxpayers and the citizens of this county will not vote these projects through. They don't benefit enough people in the county to make them pass. So what are we doing? We're getting lobbyists and crisis management firms and PR firms and even paying, but you know what I have here too? Is that at the same time that I got the contract with RSA Consulting for the state, Ron Pierce, and with Harry Glenn for the federal, $420,000, $7,000 a month per firm for lobbyists to go to the legislature, to go to the feds, to get more money. At the same time, I see that they're making donations to members of this board for their reelection campaigns, which is Janet Long and Pat Gerard, and I don't know who else, but I found both of those receiving donations directly from RSA Consulting to both campaigns. So there is a whole lot of things going on here. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker is Julie Vane.
Hi there, Julie Vane, Estates Terrace South in Seminole, 12950. When I heard Mr. Miller speaking and giving his presentation, he talked about how the earned PR, this public relations, helped hire more drivers. What about more riders? We've got 100 more employees now than several years ago in this PSTA organization. Seems to me that whenever times get tough in regular business, that we just take the people we have to do the needs that we have. You have less riders, you have less people needing to clean the bus. The buses are not getting used as much, they're not as dirty. So why do you have more people with less riders? There's less services that you're providing to maintain, well, the buses are still running the routes, but there's less use, less wear and tear, but you're just still spending the same money. What the previous speakers talked about, using our money to tell us how great you are, is disgusting to the public. It is disgusting to think that you need to pay somebody to tell us how great you are. Just be great. Just do what needs to be done. You know, there's so much. I was riding here, I passed 2 buses, and I could see, you know, they're all blacked out now. You can't tell how many people are in there. That's because you know there's hardly anybody, and you don't want us to know. But I could see because of the sun that there was nobody in these buses, and I'm thinking, why are these so big? Why don't you just go to a smaller bus? There's so many things you all could do to save money, but here you're sitting here talking about spending almost $400,000 of our money to tell us how great you are. You've got what I just heard, the former editor of the Tampa Bay Times is now working for you all, telling everybody how great you are, helping write your stories, your letters to the editor, or whatever. They're running the PR. It's just really disheartening. This is a public agency. A public agency is running algorithms on our social media to see what stories, what we say about you, so you can then counteract it. That is really pretty creepy, I gotta say. It's very creepy. It speaks of a different place, and it's not a republic. Please don't spend our money on my tax bill. I don't know how everybody looks at their tax bill, but spend our money to tell us how great you are. Increase ridership, increase services, stop clogging our streets. And I agree with the other speaker, you know, I know anybody that lives down in Gulfport or down in Pasadena. I have friends that work at Pasadena Hospital. They despise the Sunrunner. What it's done to their community, what it's done to that corridor through there. You can't put a poke on that pig, or whatever the term is. I probably messed that up, but you can't make it look good, and you're trying, and you're spending our money. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that was our final speaker for this item. We do have a motion and a second. And without any further requests for discussion, could we please open the voting machine?
Madam Chair, the item for, that is 6B that we voted on right now.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. If we could bring up 6A, if we could cancel that and bring up 6A, please. Thank you for noticing that, sir. All right, now we have the correct item up. If you could please cast your votes. And, oh, now we have it. All right, motion passes 9-3. Thank you. Next is item 6B, the Sunrunner expansion buses. And project manager Abhishek Dayal will present the recommended purchase of 3 additional Sunrunner buses using the construction project savings. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Abhishek Dayal. I'm the Director of Project Management. And I'm also joined by Mr. Henry Lukasik, the Director of Maintenance. So the action item requested as part of this item is to approve the purchase of 3 40-foot buses, hybrid electric buses at a total not to exceed amount of $3.14 million using the savings from the Sunrunner project. Now, if you recall, last month, Whitney and I had talked about the Sunrunner ridership that we had experienced in the past 6 months. As you know, Sunrunner service operates every 15 minutes from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday, all 7 days a week. And ridership continues to grow per our reporting, particularly in the corridor. And what was very interesting to find was we were actually attracting new riders to the corridor, as you can see from this graph to the right. And a lot of these events along the corridor, our operations team had to support those events by adding more service, more buses to meet the capacity needs. Through the savings that we realized with the completion of the project, and our team is really proud of that, with over $5 million in savings, we are looking to add a station in downtown St. Pete to provide access to the St. Pete Pier and all the destinations and activity centers, and that will require an additional bus. We worked with our communications, our scheduling team, and we realized that it does add about 6 minutes to the overall runtime for our service, and that necessitates a need for an additional Sunrunner bus. So here's just a breakdown of what our needs are. I know we had a lot of discussion at the Finance Committee meeting to talk about what our current service is and what our need is going to be through the addition of the station, as well as all the events that we've been supporting all throughout. So our peak service, so what we purchased as part of the project were 9 Sunrunner buses, and our peak need is 6, and with the addition of the new station, we'll add another bus to that service, so that will be a total of 7 buses. On an average, we see about 3 buses in our maintenance for various needs. Sometimes they're up for cleaning, for repairs, sometimes they're just for preventative maintenance. So on an average, we're seeing about 3 buses there. And then for all the events that we've been supporting, and there have been quite a few, we counted there were about 150 events around the year along the corridor. And so we've had to provide some additional buses just so we could keep the 15-minute frequency all along the corridor. And so that averages about 2 additional buses. So that essentially gives us a proposed need of total of 3 additional buses to support this service. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lukasik to talk about the costs and the details about the buses.
Morning, members of the board. So, as we spoke about in the Finance Committee, the 3 new buses that we are looking to order will be basically the same buses that we have now on the Sunrunner. So same form, fit, and function, same manufacturer as Gillig. We'll be utilizing the State of Florida consortium contract that is run by the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. It's a same contract we purchased most of our hybrid electric buses off in the past, utilizing the lead agency. They will come turnkey from the factory, which is another method that we typically use here, in which all of the additional equipment is installed at the time of the build. This saves a lot of turnaround time on our end. With the bike racks and the onboard ITS components, and of course the fare system's already installed at time of build. Gillig has confirmed with us that we can get these buses delivered to us in 11 months as opposed to 15 or 18 months at time we place the order. So as you see in your packet on the screen, the total cost per bus and then the total cost for all 3 buses. The other line item is typically when you utilize federal funding to purchase vehicles, there is administrative paperwork that needs to be done, such as pre-award, Buy America, post-award, and of course we have in-plant inspections to make sure that as the bus is being built, it is the buses that we have ordered and that they are built correctly and properly before delivery. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. And again, just to reiterate, the cost of these buses will be completely borne out of the savings that we realized through the project, so no impacts to the agency budget overall. And again, the other thing that we've talked about during the Finance Committee, these unused savings, they can't be repurposed to other projects. They have to be used for Sunrunner improvements also. So really, just to summarize, I mean, there are three things. We do need those 3 buses. All of those buses will be paid for out of those project savings, so no impacts to the agency budget. And then thirdly, we do have a willing vendor in Gillig who can provide those buses in a timely manner so we can respond to our community's needs. So with that, the recommendation again to the board is to approve the purchase of 3 40-foot hybrid electric buses for a total not to exceed amount of $3.14 million using these project savings. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions? All right, I'm sorry.
Yes, Abhishek, I just have one question. Just to refresh our memories, could you tell us what the total estimate cost was going to be for the Sunrunner project, and what did it actually cost us, so I can write a number down that exceeds $3.14 million?
Yeah, absolutely. So the total original project cost for Sunrunner was $43.9 million.
Excuse me?
$43.9 million. And we were actually able to complete the project at $38.6 million, so a total savings of $5.3 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we talked about this in the Finance Committee meeting, but just to reconfirm. So these buses are not, I mean, they're spec for Sunrunner, but they can be used anywhere in the system, correct?
They can be used elsewhere if they need to be deployed, but those are branded, and some of the specific amenities that we incorporated, such as the indoor bike racks, those are for the Sunrunner service.
And what will the fleet go to then? So it'll be what's 210 now, it'll be 213, 216. What will the fleet go to at that point?
Yeah, go ahead.
As of today, it's 210. When we add the 3, it'll be 213.
Are we moving anything out of the fleet?
We are always retiring buses, moving things out of the fleet. This will keep us within 19.62%, so we're a fraction of a percent below the 20% spare ratio.
Okay.
We add the 3.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Schulman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Abhishek, so you said that there was a 6-minute runtime now for the additional stop. Can you explain what that does if we don't have the extra bus to the duration of between buses, right? So it's currently 15 minutes. What happens if we don't have that extra bus?
Yeah, certainly. So if we don't add the additional bus to serve that station, the extra routing, we would be down to 20-minute frequency on an average instead of the 15-minute frequency because of the time it would take for our buses to get to that station.
Okay. Why wasn't that considered when we were talking about adding an additional stop? Right, so I would have suspected that if this was going to be an issue, that we would have discussed that at that time.
Well, we did analyze this in more detail as far as the actual travel time this would add to the stop. We had not factored in any bus lanes. We're not building any additional bus lanes to serve that stop. So with the mixed traffic and some of the traffic conditions that we're seeing now, because of the events that were happening in downtown, because of the traffic patterns that we're seeing, we do think that it's best to be able to get the community the 15-minute frequency that we have been providing that would require an additional bus. We also looked at the driver the time period for a driver to stop at the stop and for layover purposes, and adding all of that, taking that into consideration, again, that would add another 6 minutes.
Okay. Have we found that if we're running at 20-minute durations versus 15-minute durations, we will lose riders? Or is that a breaking point for riders?
I mean, we did advertise a 15-minute service, and so, I mean, I would suspect that going to a 20-minute service, that would result in people just using or choosing different options to get to their destinations. So my speculation would be that, yes, we would definitely lose some riders.
Okay. And so this is coming from the $5.3 million savings that we have in the contract, or the total budgeted amount. If we had a $6.3 million savings, would we be asking for 4 buses?
Absolutely not. The need would be for 3 buses, and that's what we're requesting.
Okay, because my struggle originally is we talked about adding a stop and adding 2 additional buses based on that need. And then it feels like we're using the money that we have as opposed to providing the service, the project that we defined. And I realize we could say that now if it goes to 20 minutes versus 15, that is augmenting the service as well. I'm also a little reluctant to go for 3 buses instead of 2 because we don't know what the ridership is going to look like for the entire period. We don't know what it looks like if we decide to go with a fare amount in the future. So we're designing a service for peak service that we don't fully understand yet. And I realize that this is potentially an opportunity that will pass us by, right? So if we don't do it now and we find out 7, 8, 9 months from now that we still do need it, that is going to be something that we're going to have to bear on our own here. But I still struggle with the 3 buses versus 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I could just make a quick comment, we are still going to have some savings even after we purchase 3 buses. So the plan is not to use up all the savings. We'll still be giving back some of the funding to our partners. But the need really is for the 3 buses. That's why we're making that recommendation.
Thank you. Before we go on, wanted to let everyone know that Commissioner Flowers has joined us by Zoom. She was unfortunately unable to join us in person this morning, but in order to have her participate as a board member in this meeting, we do need to take a vote to allow Commissioner Flowers to participate by Zoom. Therefore, I'll entertain a motion.
Approval. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And whenever we have that ready, if we could open the voting system.
I think we'll have to.
Oh, do we need a?
Or just do a verbal?
You could just do it.
Okay. We just have to do a voice vote.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And welcome, Commissioner Flowers. Do we have any other questions?
Chair.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
We'll go next to Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to dovetail off of what Commissioner Scott had to say about utilizing the Sunrunners on regular routes if necessary. From an operational standpoint, do they kneel, I guess this might go to Henry. Do they kneel, Henry, is the same height or distance down as the normal, or other buses do?
Yes.
They do? Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Flowers, unfortunately, I'm unable to see you on the screen, so if you could indicate if you've requested to speak.
That was just to let you know that I was here. I'm so sorry. I will take my hand down.
All right, thank you. And don't let me miss you if you do want to speak. Sometimes it's not easy to see that you've requested to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment, not really a question, is I have some concerns with this, and it's not a Sunrunner concern, but it's just an overall fleet and systems concern that we're adding vehicles to the fleet, but the ridership that isn't there to support it from an overall systems perspective. So you know, in a transportation company, there's two big things that drive your budget, and that's the number of vehicles you're maintaining and the number of paychecks you're writing. So I've just got some challenges with that, and we're probably not going to be supporting this.
All right, thank you. Now, when we're talking about specific Sunrunner buses, you've mentioned that there is a difference, and they're not really, truly interchangeable with our regular buses. And the bike racks are one great example of that because the platforms are meant for you to be able to roll your bike on and have that indoor rack for it. So that's a little hard to do for many people if they need to lift a bicycle onto it in an area that doesn't have a platform. So I think about the needs for this particular system as different from the rest of our system. Also, these funds are not going to be hanging out there forever, and we do have a strong case I think you've made to add to this particular fleet. I know that we've had just incredible demand during events days, and on a lot of the Rays games, I mean, Rays attendance is going up, and there are more and more people using the Sunrunner to get to and from the games. And so the things that we were hoping would happen with the Sunrunner are happening. When you look at these events, it is really clear to see that when we have a full bus, and it's up to standing room only on an event morning, and you've got people left on the platform and they have to wait another 15 minutes, you know, we know that we need these extra buses for those high demand days. And we've had more of them than we thought that we would have for the first 6 months or so. My concern is that we have an 11-month lead time. That means it might be next April or May before we get these. And by then we'll have gone through another season of high demand events. And we'll be trying to make up for that in, however we can, but we'll have people who are waiting longer. So I do see a real need for this, and having those three, I think, is going to help. Well, we need to have the additional one to help make the new station work, and there is very strong demand. The biggest thing I hear as far as constructive feedback on how we could change it is we could get it closer to the pier, and this will accomplish that. It also has potential to really serve more people as kind of a park and ride because of the garage being right there. A question for you is, what is the time frame for the new station?
So we're in design, and thanks to the board for approving the contract with H.W. Lochner so they could start design. We did get the approval from FTA that we could, start using the funds towards the station. So we have given a notice to proceed to our design team to begin at least preliminary design. Work with the community, work with the city of St. Petersburg to start design and complete it. And we hope to start the construction sometime late this year or early part of next year, and hope to have the project, or at least the new station, by 2024.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. So we will have another heavy event season, struggling to meet the demand on those days. And I do think it's important to keep our frequency at 15 minutes. I know that when the St. Pete's Downtown Looper changed and shortened its frequency, the ridership went up. When it's dependable and you don't have to wait too long, especially during our hot days, it does make a big difference on whether or not someone will choose to hop on. And for those who don't have a choice, it makes things a little bit more comfortable and convenient for them. So I think 15 minutes seems to be the magic number right now with these things. And so I would be supportive for that and the other reasons I've given to purchase these buses. And I thank you for all of the work that you continue to do on this. Commissioner Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, Abhishek. If any funds that are left over from the grant is, when are they due back to the FTA if they're not spent?
So they would be de-obligated back to FTA within a year if we don't spend them now.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Oliver?
Yeah, mine was actually a follow-up question to that. I share Commissioner Schulman's concern about 3 buses at this time, not knowing that we've not made the decision about fares for the Sunrunner and an expectation that there may be fares and that may impact ridership. So I don't know if an amendment would be in order for 2 buses or if we even want to go in that direction. I heard from many people, many emails from folks who support this, but I do have a concern, and my question is, what other uses could this money go toward? Have there been any analysis? I beat the drum. Arterial routes, our friends from Seminole. How can Seminole residents get more easily to the Sunrunner? Are there ways that we can spend this money more effectively to address ridership from other parts of the county?
Well, I think we are looking at multiple projects, not just the bus purchase or even the additional station at St. Pete Pier using those savings. We're looking to enhance our communications feeds into our existing stations so it's more reliable, but through a partnership with the county, Pinellas County, to add more fiber connectivity. So that's something we're actually using our savings towards as well. Okay. We're also adding some art panels on the stations that did not get artwork, again, in partnership with City of St. Petersburg. So all of those additional projects are also being added using those savings. And so that's what we have looked at. And we're certainly going to work with our communications and marketing teams to make sure that residents outside the corridor can easily access Sunrunner. It's for everyone. We want to make sure that everyone has the ability to be able to get to Sunrunner, to go to those Raise events, go to those local Topia and other St. Pete events using the Sunrunner.
And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see some specific allocations of funds for that. I mean, this is PSTA, not SPTA. And if I were Commissioner Driscoll, I'd feel the same way about supporting St. Pete, but I'm from Seminole. And I know a lot of residents are having some of the same concerns that were raised earlier. And I think we increase ridership, and I agree with Commissioner Scott, that's something we've got to look at. And we want to increase ridership across this county, and we want to find out how we can get people from Largo and Seminole and Dunedin to use the bus system more. And if we could find some ways to use these excess funds for something like that, I feel a lot more comfortable with it.
All right, thank you. Brad?
Thank you. Dr. Oliver, certainly that is a goal that we need to address. Obviously, recognizing that you're from Seminole, of course you would like more service to Seminole and get more riders from Seminole. With these savings, the way we're using these funds, it has to be used on Sunrunner. The federal government and the state government will not allow us to run other buses to Seminole or to any other part with these funds. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to add more service to Seminole as well. It's just the nature of this project coming in under budget as to save that. And to a point that Commissioner Scott said, by getting 3, while as Chair Driscoll said, it is a problem. We're having a problem right now whenever we use a non-Sunrunner bus on the Sunrunner. That is not great for the riders. The bike racks are not there, and they bring their bikes, and the bus has to pull up beyond the station to allow them to board. It creates a lot of problems. But the flip, if, as suggested, we don't know what the future might hold, if the ridership goes down further, or ridership is going up on Sunrunner, but if it changes for some reason, if the Rays move or something like that, these buses could be redeployed to lovely Seminole or to another, they could be painted blue and then put into our regular fleet with relatively no problem. So, and then, and as Commissioner Scott was saying, and then we would be able to reduce the number of buses, we would be able to dispose from the other buses that are older. So I just want to make that clear. These buses, when we buy them, they are for the Sunrunner, and they're needed now for the Sunrunner. But if something changes, they can be redeployed.
Great, thank you. And if we don't use these funds to purchase these buses now, and we need them later, then potentially that money would have to come at the expense of other projects. So I think that's something important to keep in mind as we consider this. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have we considered looking at our lowest performing routes and converting those to microtransit, and then taking those buses and transferring them to the Sunrunner, particularly since it's only being really for peak demand and special event services, which is not really what I don't think the intent of the Sunrunner was, at least not at the outset. And then just returning the money. I mean, I don't feel a personal obligation to have to spend that money. I mean, our country is $30 trillion in debt. So I mean, have we looked at converting some lower performing routes to microtransit and then transferring that fleet over, even if they're not necessarily ideal for the Sunrunner? I mean, we don't necessarily live in a perfect world, and is it worth spending over $3 million to have an ideal, perfect situation on one route in the county?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Scott. So we have been using currently other buses. I can't speak to the low-performing routes, whether we pull them from there, but we have been using some from our normal bus pool to be able to serve and meet the demands along the corridor. As I noted, these buses do not have those bike racks inside. They do not have the extra wide doors for bikes to go in and out easily. And then the other thing is, if someone's carrying a bike and they'd like to use the Sunrunner, they actually have to step down 14 inches of the platform to be able to access the bike racks that are in the front. That also holds back the buses, which is really one of the reasons why we made the buses the way they are designed, to make them rapid, to be able to get people in and out quickly so that they can get to their destination quickly and keep that 15-minute frequency. So while we're still using our regular buses, we are kind of struggling with that aspect. Well, people who are trying to access the bike racks, they choose either to wait for the next actual Sunrunner bus to show up, or they have to essentially use the bike racks in the front and then access the system, which again causes a little bit of delay.
So we have 12 months to spend the money. When does that expire? So I'm just trying to, what time frame do we have to explore other options before we sign a deal on 2 or 3 new Sunrunner buses?
Well, so it's not just the federal funding. We also have the state funding. We also have City of St. Pete funding. All of these have some different expiration dates. So we will have to work with all the funding partners to understand when we can actually complete the package and spend the money. But the 1 year that I noted is for the federal government, along with the local match that's required typically. And the Sunrunner buses that we're talking about, they just so happen to fit within that 1 year time frame, the 11 months, so that we can actually use those funds to pay for those buses.
All right, Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question of, this might be for Brad. He just mentioned that we can redeploy the buses if they're not being used, if ridership changes. Is there an FTA requirement to keep those buses on the Sunrunner route for a certain amount of time, or we would be restricted in redeploying them based on the funding source?
We'll have to check with FTA on that. I don't believe, I mean, they certainly they don't require us to use a specific bus. I mean, to my knowledge, it's not checking like the VIN numbers or anything like that on the vehicles. So I don't think there would be a problem.
But if we went from 7, 8, 9 buses on the Sunrunner route as far as FTA is paid for and went down to 6, they would be fine with us taking those other 3 buses and moving them someplace else?
We have to maintain the service levels that we put in the original grant for, I can't remember how many years. But we do have a requirement to maintain the service, the 15-minute frequency service, the regular service. Now, on the special events, I'm not really sure, but we will have to maintain that service.
Okay. And also, Abhishek, a follow-up to Commissioner Oliver's discussion about arterial routes. You know, one of the things that I've been mentioning in several different meetings is our ability to market the Sunrunner on arterial routes, whether it's through bus stop signage or signage on arterial buses saying this is how you get to the Sunrunner, right? So Commissioner Driscoll talked about the new stop being near parking garages. My goal is to get people to not use the parking garages, but take the bus from their home and connect to the Sunrunner. So can any of these funds be used to help market the arterial routes connecting to the Sunrunner, thereby increasing ridership?
We can certainly use some of the marketing efforts to be able to show that this is how you connect to the Sunrunner, which is, by the way, we're already doing that. But I think what you're specifically asking for is maybe signage at the stations or at the bus stops where you can connect through the Sunrunner. We actually deployed, again, working with the city of St. Pete, we deployed wayfinding signs all along Central Avenue so that people know which direction they can get to if they're heading to the beach or to downtown. So we can certainly enhance that signage and visibility so people know it's not only through walking, but you can also connect to north-south routes to be able to come from or to South Pinellas County or North Pinellas County. I don't expect that to be a substantial endeavor to be able to use federal funds and FDOT funds to be able to deploy signage. We can essentially do that just outside that.
I appreciate that. And wayfinding is great, but that's, on Central's in the corridor already. So it's convenient, but not necessarily bringing on new riders. And I guess my vision for the marketing and wayfinding on routes is much grander than yours, because I'm thinking a bigger deployment of funds to help riders in Seminole say that they drive by a bus stop in Seminole and there's a sign there that says this one connects to the Sunrunner, so that people learn where they can connect, or using our Direct Connect program where they might be able to then take an Uber to a spot that then hops on, right? So more versus a marketing plan to spread the word, I'm looking at physical wayfinding and other options to help people internalize where they can get on a bus to then connect to the Sunrunner, right? So driving by a stop 50 times a day, or in a month, on your normal route, and then you go, oh, now I can take that, versus seeing that ad or whatnot once. So I guess I'm thinking of a bigger deployment of those funds. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed?
My question is, and I kind of agree with everything that's being said, is that we focus so much on the Sunrunner, and I understand we have to spend these dollars, but now we can't, if we put the buses in the Sunrunner, we can't take them out for so long to be used elsewhere if when we start charging fees, there's not the ridership, right? Right?
That's correct, yes.
So they would just sit in the parking lot?
Well, I mean, we are looking to keep the 15-minute frequency. That's really the primary purpose for those buses. So if there's for the new station that we're adding, we will need an additional bus, regardless of capacity constraints, because of the additional time it would take, the run time and the distance that the buses would now have to cover to keep that 15-minute frequency gap. You would still need that bus, independent of whether the capacity is, whether the buses are over capacity or under capacity. But the 2 buses that I noted for the demand management, that is for those options where when we do get those heavy loads during events. I'll give you an example. For the Rays games in April, We actually saw 75% more riders during the Rays games, during game days than non-game days at the Tropicana Field Station. So that's where we would bring on those buses so that we can carry those loads, we can keep the 15-minute frequency. That's really what the intended purpose is for those buses.
So we're Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. The buses and everything we keep talking about is, I love St. Pete, don't get me wrong. But we're putting all of this in place for events in St. Pete. So does St. Pete fund these new buses or match the money? Because it's benefiting St. Pete. It doesn't benefit Seminole, it doesn't benefit Clearwater, doesn't benefit Largo, unless you drive your vehicle from Largo to a parking garage to get on a bus because it's free to go to the event. I get it, but then again, we're talking about taxpayers' dollars throughout Pinellas County, not just St. Pete tax dollars. So is there a way that we're looking at St. Pete for saying, this is a huge benefit for you and we're making you awesome? Where did they kick in to make it for this? And I get it, I'm getting a lot of faces, I understand that, but, you know, I look at it as being, you know, Seminole, we're all sitting over here going, we get this bus and we still have to drive, you know, you see what I'm saying? So that's just my question and kind of a thought as we move forward to spend $3 million. Could that $3 million be spent on the software and some of the problems we're looking at and all of this marketing that, yes, would be Sunrun, but it would benefit the entire program for everybody? I don't know, that's way beyond me, but I just feel like we're always talking about Sunrunner and benefiting events in St. Pete. That's my 2 cents.
Just to comment, we've supported events not just in St. Pete, but also in the beach area. We had the Sunset Serenade event where we invited local musicians to ride the bus, and people were destined to the St. Pete Beach in the beach park. So we've supported events all throughout the corridor. I can't speak to whether it's St. Pete residents who are only riding Sunrunner to the Rays games or to all those different events. I can't speak to that. But, I mean, this is really to benefit the community and to be able to provide easy access for all residents of Pinellas County and even the Tampa Bay region. So that's what I can really speak to.
Thank you. And before we go on, I'd love to get some clarification from either of you, and I know this has been mentioned before, that this money can only be spent on specific things, and that's why this is the item before us today. And it's why we're talking specifically about Sunrunner, because that's where the funds can be spent, correct?
That is exactly right, yes.
Thank you. So this isn't taking away from any other project or entity?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There was a comment made earlier, and I just wanted to clarify, make sure that I understood it correctly. Is the Sunrunner, is it required by FTA to be on a 15-minute schedule? That is, don't let me speak for you.
Yes, so we did sign a single-year grant agreement with FTA, and that specifically spells out the operational requirements for the project, and that is 15-minute frequency.
Thank you, Abhishek. So for this first year, for the money that we receive from FTA to spend on Sunrunner, we have to have 15-minute intervals. We can't go to 20-minute intervals. We can't go to any of the other things. Otherwise, that grant money is at risk, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay,
we would have to get special permission from FTA or maybe amend the agreement if we decide to go with a different operating parameters.
Thanks. And I don't want to go back to their office and ask them for that, so I appreciate that clarification. And then just to kind of address some of the other comments that have been made, I obviously do represent the city of Largo, but I also realize that transportation is a regional issue. So, you know, what benefits St. Pete will benefit Seminole, will benefit Largo, and everybody that's sitting on this board, and all the other residents in this county. So and in the region. So we need to continue to try to make our transportation better. I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I think there's been some discussion, a lot of discussion about that today. But anything that we do to improve transportation in this county enhances and helps every single resident in this county. So I want to just kind of get that out there. I would love to see, more options to get to Sunrunner from Largo, from Seminole, from Pinellas Park. But again, I also understand though that A, this money has to be spent strictly on Sunrunner, and B, Sunrunner's enhancements help everybody else out in this county as well. So that's what I have for today. Thank you. And thank you for that clarification, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Fix Sanders?
Thank you, Chair. You all have pretty much clarified what I was going to say, and not to be redundant. When we actually started planning for Sunrunner from day one, we knew what the route was going to be, St. Pete. When we accepted the dollars and the time frame for the Sunrunner and what it needed to be used for, we knew that from day one, St. Pete. We are fortunate to have the raise in St. Pete. So it's not as though we are looking to specify assets for only St. Pete. We knew the logistics going in, so I just wanted to clarify that, not to complicate the issue about St. Pete. This St. Pete elected official has spoken much about extending Sunrunner, not just going from end to end, from St. Pete to the beaches, but going north to south. So those conversations are being had. Those plans are trying to be had because I represent a district that's nowhere near Central or downtown. So we all have those same issues, but right now the Sunrunner is in St. Pete. And again, I agree that it is a regional issue. We have tourists that come in to St. Pete because of the beaches and the rays. And if we can make that mobile, maybe, but we can't. It's in St. Pete. So it does give a broader view to the Tampa Bay area. If those of you all have seen the traffic coming into 75 either way on Rays games and special events, they're coming from other areas. And if we can do anything to increase the tourism to this area to benefit anyone in this area, I think that is a win-win for us. So I just didn't want us to lose focus as to what this particular ask is for the Sunrunner that is in St. Pete. So, yeah, it's in St. Pete. So with that, I don't know if we've had a motion made for this, but if not, I'm going to move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And we'll go to Commissioner Oliver.
Love St. Pete. I do. And I love that the Sunrunner runs to St. Pete. And so I wouldn't want my Seminole-centric comments to be misinterpreted. I also meant by that Largo and Dunedin and the like. And my point is, and it follows on Commissioner Schulman's point, I'd like to see a comprehensive marketing plan. And if we could use these funds, some of these funds, to do wayfinding and to get folks who are at the Seminole City Center to say, this is how you get to Sunrunner. Right now, there's no way that I know of for folks to know how to get from the Seminole City Center to the beach. You can't get to the beach without getting to Sunrunner. There's no direct route to the beach, and that's been a concern I've shared with Brad for some time. And so my point on this and the concern is that we're asking for 3 more buses. We don't know about fees for Sunrunner and what impact that'll have. We don't know what the options are for using funds for a comprehensive marketing effort that will take those arterial routes to St. Pete and to the beaches, because that's an important part of it as well. I do have a follow-up question, though. Those 15-minute intervals, how many buses, how many times now do we exceed those 15-minute intervals? Has there been data on that? Because I thought I heard Commissioner Scott talk about that's a special events problem, that's when we really run into a problem with being beyond the 15 minutes, and that the grant doesn't specifically require us, and this gets back to Jamie's point, to deal with special events. So how many of our regular route buses are beyond that 15-minute interval? Do we know that? What percentage of routes are beyond the 15 minutes?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm happy to get that to you. I will say that on Fridays and Saturdays in particular, outside the events, we do see buses kind of spaced out a little bit more than we'd like to, but I'm happy to get that more information for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, Dr. Oliver, I know that the whole PSTA system only has 2 other routes in the whole system that have 15-minute frequency.
Yeah.
And there are higher ridership routes. The route that goes up and down Ulmerton Road and the route that goes up and down 4th Street. Those are the only 2. Every other route in the system has, I don't even know how many I don't think we really have any that are just 20, but we have 30-minute, 45 or longer.
Right.
But Chair Driscoll, if I could just maybe respond to the questions about how we are trying to serve the entire county and work on that. I just met with my monthly meeting with Whit Blanton yesterday about talking about how we can capitalize on the success of Sunrunner to build the next corridor, whether it's up US 19, up and down US 19, or alternate 19. We're going to look at all of those items. That has been the goal of Sunrunner all along, is to be a success. It has been for several decades the highest ridership corridor, just because of the development of Central Avenue and the beach in the Tampa Bay region for probably 25 years. It was the number one corridor. It is the highest ridership corridor. So obviously, that's where we started, but that hopefully is not where we finish. And certainly keeping the Sunrunner a success will be important to getting additional federal dollars brought to this region for the additional corridors, including to Seminole.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Schulman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one quick question for clarification on your answer to Commissioner Robinson. You said that we have a 1-year agreement with FTA to provide a 15-minute interval. Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said. I
Okay,
said
clarification.
we have a single-year grant agreement. That's what it's officially called.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it's only for 1 year. That's an agreement that we signed back in 2020 that spells out what FTA participation is going to be and what PSTA's responsibilities are going to be in terms of the service that we provide once we open the Sunrunner line. And that spells out our 15-minute commitment to operate the service.
Okay, and we have that commitment for the duration of Sunrunner's existence.
Well, there's specific requirements for how many years you have to operate this service for. I don't know exactly. I can't recall what that was, but I know it does specifically call out the 15-minute frequency of service that we put in the grant agreement.
Okay, and does PSTA's adding an additional stop and potentially adding additional lead time then afford us the ability to augment that agreement with FTA? Right, they approved the additional stop, so they must also know that there's going to be additional time. You said there's a 6-minute additional lag. Yes. So does that change the underlying agreement so that we're not necessarily beholden to the 15-minute?
Well, we would certainly have to amend the agreement to add that stop and use those federal funds. And I would think that we would keep that 15-minute frequency requirement.
But the agreement can be amended then?
It can be amended to add that new stop, correct.
And potentially change the timing?
To
change the timing interval from 15 minutes
from
to
15
17
minutes
minutes.
to 20 minutes?
I'm still stuck on how 6 minutes adds 20 minutes to every stop. That math doesn't work for me, so I'm struggling with how we get to that. And does it make those 2 stops between there, 20 minutes, and then everything else gets back on? I mean, the distance between the other stops didn't all shift. Right. So I'm struggling with that, and I was trying to understand whether or not we're at risk of losing other grant opportunities or having to put more grant, return grant money if we don't do that. But you're saying is that agreement can be amended. And if the driver of the being outside of that agreement is the fact that we added a stop that they agreed to, then it seems like they'd be willing to accept that amendment. But thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to, thank you.
All right, thank you. We do have a lot of public comment waiting, and so I will go to Commissioner Oliver, but since some folks have spoken 2 and 3 times already, I'd like to, after this, go to a public comment and give our citizens a chance to be heard. Commissioner Oliver.
I'm sorry, I'll be very quick, Madam Chair. There's a lot of questions about this, and maybe, I don't think it's just me that has a lot of questions about this. I'd like to move to table this to the next meeting so that we can have a better opportunity to get some focused answers to some of these questions that you said you could find out about. I'll move to table.
Madam Chair, there's already a motion on the floor.
There is.
Do we have a parliamentarian? Is it appropriate to make a motion to table?
No.
It is
First
not.
of all, the table's not the correct motion. You want to postpone it is really what you want to do. But there's a motion on the floor. You either can amend that motion or
I'll withdraw
Start
the
another
comment
motion.
if I can't table.
But table's not the appropriate terminology. Table under Robert's rules means to put it aside, not to bring it back on a specific date. So if you were to, your correct terminology, if you have the opportunity to make the motion, is a motion to postpone until the next meeting. Okay.
So I can make a motion to, I'm sorry with the mask, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is it, I can make a motion to postpone?
No, I'm saying right now you can't make a motion to postpone, but if the motion that's on the table, on the floor is denied, your appropriate motion would be then to postpone, not to table.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. We're going to go to public comment next. When your name is called, if you could approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Our first speaker is Claudine Reese. Claudine has waived the opportunity to.
Okay, yeah, I waived.
Yes, waived the opportunity to speak and is against this item. So just reading that into the record. Next is Deanna Hogue, who has waived speaking and is against this item. Our next,
I think it's Joseph, but I'm not sure. It might be Jensen.
yeah, it looks like Jensen Schmidt. Is perhaps no longer here, was against this item. Next, Gisela Laubitz.
Hi, Gisela Laubitz, 1432 Durling Drive South, South Pasadena, Florida, full-time resident and homeowner. I am speaking out against this allocation of $3,140,000. I believe none of you seem to understand. This country is broke. We are drowning in debt. And all you know here is to spend more money, waste more of hard-earned taxpayers' money. And this organization has collected almost double in real estate taxes from 2013 to 2022, and it still doesn't seem to be enough. And your ridership has gone down 40%. Maybe it's about time this whole organization takes a close look what is really happening in the world. This is preposterous to think that you need to spend the money because it has been given to you. It's taxpayer money. It's not your money. So I'm totally against it, and I hope maybe a few more of you people wake up to that.
Thank you. The next speaker is Julianne, last name starts with a C.
Good morning. My name is Julianne Causey. I live at 132 Punta Vista Drive in St. Pete Beach. Got to get to the beginning of my notes. St. Pete Beach is only over a mile long. There are already 3 different buses that come down that mile stretch. The Sunrunner is the biggest of all of them and takes up the entire lane. There's no extra space. It stops traffic, and no one is on them. I rarely see anybody on the Sunrunner in St. Pete Beach. So, by the way, you could use some of those buses on the St. Pete Beach route for the events that you're talking about and save the $3 million. I live in the middle of Gulf Boulevard, and I rarely see anyone utilize the buses. I do hope y'all are listening to me, and to all of the citizens that are speaking that are against these things you're voting on. We are the citizens, we're the taxpayers. We are the ones who elect officials. And I feel like it's wasted because I don't feel like you're really listening to us. All right. I propose you use $3 million on public safety at the bus stops. For example, a great idea might be a pedestrian bridge. These buses are a safety issue. As I said, there's no extra space. St. Pete Beach is only a mile long. The lanes are very narrow, and I live in the middle of Gulf Boulevard. I have to turn left to go to Publix. I have almost personally gotten hit by the Sunrunner 2 times when I turn left out of my drive, because you have to pull out a little bit to see if there's any oncoming traffic. Well, guess what? The Sunrunner takes up the entire lane. So if you pull out to see if you can safely turn left, you're going to get hit. It is a major issue, safety issue, pedestrian issue. There's tons of people that hop on and over the streets all the time. The Sunrunner goes 35 miles an hour down Gulf Boulevard. And it's totally unsafe. Nobody should ever go 35 miles an hour down Gulf Boulevard, and especially a huge bus that takes up it takes up the entire lane. So please listen to us on this vote. I pray that you postpone this or table it completely. We do not need any more of these buses on our roads. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Roseanne Nielsen. And she indicated that she is undecided. The next speaker is Holly Noah.
Holly Noah, 811 Placido Way, Northeast, St. Pete. I'm just going to add a few bullet points. If you add a stop, you need to adjust the contract with the Fed to add time. It's plain and simple. People are perfectly able to wait an extra 5 minutes. And I want you to consider when you go to Disney World in, early January after the holidays, before MLK Day, there's no one there. And you might wait 5 or 10 minutes to get on Space Mountain. But if you go in March, you're going to wait a little bit longer. In fact, you're probably going to wait, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. The point is that when there are special events downtown like Grand Prix or Mainsail or concerts in the park, etc., there's an expectation that there are going to be more people, and there might be a little bit of a wait. We are tough people, believe it or not. We citizens of the state of Florida and across this country are capable of waiting a few extra minutes. And I just want to reinforce one other thing. $5.3 million back to the FTA and to state and local agencies is a beautiful thing. We're $31 trillion in debt in this country. Every penny counts. Send it back and save the money. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Max McCann.
Good morning, Max McCann, 2648 3rd Avenue South in St. Pete. I say this as a fiscal conservative who hates government waste and who drives on 1st Avenue North and South almost every weekday. We have got to move away from car-centric infrastructure and make it easier for people to walk and bike and take mass transit, so I'm urging the board to purchase these 3 additional buses. Now, most of us have spent the majority of our lives in car-centric infrastructure, so the cost of this kind of system is normalized to us. But I want to encourage you to move to step back, pretend you're an alien from outer space, put your status quo bias behind you, and actually look at the costs of driving, and you'll see that mass transit pales in comparison. Cars are expensive, dangerous, unhealthy, bad for the planet, bad for our mental health. They promote social isolation. They increase dependency on foreign oil, and they discourage other forms of transportation. And my pet issue is that they rob vulnerable members of our society, like kids, the elderly, the disabled, the poor, of independence and autonomy. Now, people think cars are the dominant form of transportation because they're superior, but I would say, no, the dominant form of transportation because of several policy failures and subsidies. We subsidize the construction and maintenance of roads and highways for cars. We subsidize gas. We subsidize the auto industry, healthcare costs associated with driving. We shield drivers from the environmental impacts of automobiles. We have minimum off-street parking requirements that guarantee ample parking everywhere you go. And we have outdated zoning laws that mandate sprawl, that encourages driving and discourages other forms of transportation. I want to emphasize it's currently illegal in most of the county to build mixed-use developments that encourage walkability here. That's got to change. So I think of transportation systems kind of like a garden, and you got different kind of plants. You got cars, bikes, buses, and walking. Right now, we're giving all this water and this fertilizer to cars, and they're flourishing, and they're blocking out the sun, and they're choking off all the other plants. And then we look at the other plants, and we say, oh, ridership is low. This plant's a failure. We shouldn't give it any more resources. Of course it's failing. We've designed it to fail. We've designed our county for cars, and we sprinkle in a little mass transit as an afterthought. By prioritizing cars, our current transportation policy is exactly backwards. 1 person dies in Pinellas County every 3 days from traffic violence. Let that sink in. Cars are the #2 cause of death for kids. This is unacceptable. Kids have to be shuttled around in private automobiles by their parents like invalids. That's no way to grow up. So we have to encourage people to get out of their cars. We should give the lion's share of resources to biking, walking, and mass transit. And the Sunrunner is the plant in our garden with the best chance of success. Let's give it those buses and keep the fares free forever. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Nicole Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Roberts. I live at 444 30th Avenue North in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I'd first of all like to thank you all for your service on the PSTA board and for all your efforts to bring the Sunrunner BRT to St. Petersburg. It truly has been transformative in our community for the way people interact and perceive public transportation, which elevates the PSTA system as a whole. This is necessary as we have tons of people moving to the Tampa Bay area, and if all of those individuals bring their vehicles with them, we do not have the traffic capacity to handle all of that. If traffic is bad now, wait for 5-10 years down the road. In addition to this, the sustainability efforts, we see those impacts directly being a peninsula on a peninsula. It's been proven that single occupancy vehicles are the #1 contributor to carbon emissions. So we need to get more people out of their single occupancy vehicles and into public transportation like the Sunrunner. So because of all of these reasons, I am urging you all to support the Sunrunner and support this finance request to purchase 3 additional buses. I know I personally have worked at events like Localtopia and Halloween on Central, large downtown events that are going on with other downtown events, and people will have to wait for multiple buses to be able to get to those events and ride the Sunrunner down. These people are not waiting the 15 minutes advertised, but up to 30, maybe even 45 minutes before they're able to board the bus. That's one reason why it's imperative we have these additional buses to be able to plug in and support these special events in downtown St. Petersburg, as well as with the additional stop in the downtown area, which I'm very excited for. It will add that park and ride component that a lot of the community has been asking for. I know PSTA has researched it'll add a 6-minute ad time, but I don't know if that considers all the street closures that happen due to the downtown events. I think that'll add more time to the wait time, especially as we're approaching summer in this heat. Those 20-minute, 30-minute wait times can really be unbearable. Finally, couple all of these factors with the occasional mechanical malfunctions that happen when you're running buses daily, and I think you all can see the need for these 3 additional Sunrunner buses. So I will leave you all with my plea to please support this finance request, and thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Next speaker is Barb Hazelton.
Barbara Hazelton, 1043 31st Terrace Northeast, St. Pete. Are you as amused as I am? This has gone for this, just ridiculous, you know. I almost feel like that your catalyst is already paying off and that they're writing speeches for the last 2 speakers. It's like there's text messages going on, and we got to do some pushback, because this is how this kind of works. And I know that from riding the Sunrunner and from following the Sunrunner in down First Avenue North, First Avenue South, all the way out to the beach, observing what's going on during the high times, during the not-so-high times, that there's only a portion of the time that it's busy, which is you know, good. But we have 20%, nearly 20% of PSTA's bus fleet that is not in service and can be used as a reserve. It is a reserve. And those buses can be used during those times when more transit may be needed on the Sunrunner. I think that someone mentioned about, it might have been Mrs. Sanders, might have mentioned about the Rays baseball games. So you have a portion of time that people are going to the stadium, then they sit in the stadium for 2 or 3 hours, and then there's a portion of time that they're leaving the stadium, and that's it. It's just like talking about the lanes. It's every 15 minutes, and yet we're giving up all of this capacity of travel. So my point on the Rays game is use those 20% reserved buses to, just like you do. And by the way, I looked at the website, PSTA, yesterday, and saw that that's already a very common transit procedure during high times, especially in the morning, of routes taking people to important places in their lives, that certain buses are deployed in addition to the normal route. They don't have to match. We're talking about a lot of talk about spending millions of dollars for bicycle accommodations. These are all, I think, pretty tough sells to the taxpayer. We're not using the capacity of the road to the degree that it would be used with car traffic. We're not using the capacity of what would be the extra buses when you're talking about dropping someone off at the Rays, because they're going to be sitting in there for 3 hours. So common sense should prevail with regards to spending taxpayer dollars. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Julie Vane.
there, Julie Vane, 12950 Estates Terrace South, Seminole. Who takes a bike to a Rays game? Who takes a bike to the pier or to the beach? Not many people you take a bike to an event. It's really hard to walk around an event and go to vendor tables and go to a bar or a club or whatever with your bike in tow. I find that really odd. And I would really wish that I could get an answer back. How many buses or how many bikes per day actually go on to the Sunrunner route? Because I don't know if it's 5 a day, 3 a day, or 50 a day. I have no idea, but when you talk about bikes like it's really important, 14 inches is not that far. And there are other citizens that do help citizens that can't lift, and I just find that very odd. My next comment has to do with this extra stop, that when the Sunrunner was originally adopted or routed, I would have thought that you would have wanted to go to the pier. So there must have been a reason why this board voted or chose to not go to the pier. So then, it's almost like a bait and switch in a way to both the state and the agencies to say, we're not going to go to the pier, we're going to do 15 minutes, and now it's like, oh, we changed our mind, we're going to go to the most popular place in the city, and we don't want to add more time, so then we need to use this $3 million. It's silly and foolish to think that we don't realize what's happened. As far as this, we couldn't get it through the first time, so now we're gonna get it through how we could, and then we're gonna do what we really wanted to do. And that's why we didn't spend the $3 million. Send the money back, because you don't know what's gonna happen to ridership once you start charging. And if you don't start charging, you think people are against you now, wait. Because the rest of the county is not gonna continue to fund a free ridership along one route. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dr. Nancy Sola.
Hi, I'm Nancy Sula, 151 7th Street South. I live in downtown St. Pete, and I also own a property. I rent downtown, and I own a property in South Pasadena. I moved here about 1.5 years ago, and I just love living, particularly in the downtown area, because it's so accessible to, go wherever you want. I was so impressed with public transportation here. I take the trolley, I take the Sunrunner, I'm like so excited about it, and I'm saddened to hear so many comments against it. I wanted to actually come here today to congratulate you and thank you for all the work you're doing on this. I have friends who come in from out of town and colleagues, and they're blown away with the Sunrunner. So I'm like, it was eye-opening for me to hear comments to the contrary, but I get it, because we all have our own, we come from our own position on this. To me, a lot of the things that I heard, there was a comment about bikes. I've certainly taken my bike to events, and you essentially lock it up and then you walk around the event. So I take the Sunrunner a lot, and I have to say that there are many times that I am it's standing room only, and I am standing with all the people. And most of the time I take the Sunrunner, somebody's on there with a bike. So I'm kind of like, this is, I'm feeling like I'm living in two realities here, because as a rider, and I have to say, psychologically, I do a lot of work I work as an educational consultant in school districts, and I do a lot of work around how the human brain works. And we live on a 5-minute rule. The human brain thinks in terms of 5-minute intervals. There is a huge difference between 15 minutes and 20 for the American human brain. We're not people who like to wait for anything. So if I have to wait 15 minutes, if I get there and it says Sunrunner in 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, I want it in 10. if I have to wait 20, I do believe that I would opt to take my car. It's like, okay, not worth the wait. So I do think there's something to be said about why the grant is saying, I heard that, there's a 15-minute rule on this. So I would encourage you to stick with that. And the other thing is, I think that obviously any public entity like this has a responsibility to not look at only the current facts, but plan for the future. We have huge growth here. We need to get people out of cars. They are dangerous to pedestrians. They're dangerous to one another. And I think we need to look ahead. If we don't have the ridership, we need to build the ridership, not stop public transportation. So I encourage you to vote for this. And I'm also thrilled at all the ideas that have come up, that have sprung up based on this conversation. So I hope we'll get to talk about a lot of others. But I encourage you to go with this, and let's get that Sunrunner working for us.
Thank you. Julianne Causey? Oh. This one, I believe you may have done multiple cards.
Well, I did because you did the agenda 6B, 6A.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you. Toby Vonkoth?
Hi, I'm Toby Vonkoth, 8164 Martin Lane in Seminole, and I just want to say that I really appreciate having the Sunrunner right at the intervals that it currently has. I'm in favor of adding the 3 buses. I think anything that can help keep that headway low is good. I would probably prefer maybe around 6 minutes, but that's just me. But honestly, if that were the case, I think there would be a lot more ridership when the headways are a lot lower. I'm a bike messenger in downtown St. Pete, so I do use the streets in addition to the bike lanes. And one thing that I've noticed when I do take the Sunrunner is that there's a lot of e-bikes that are on there now, which are a little bit different than the traditional steel or aluminum bikes, and they are a little bit heavier. And so I appreciate that the bike racks inside are there for people who use them, and I like how they're spring-loaded and kind of suck the bike up. So it's really not that much of an effort, and older people can use it too. One thing that I like to mention outside of the events, major events like the Rays games, is that Friday nights, Saturday nights, when deliveries are high for me, I do see a lot of people that end up using the Sunrunner. One of the busier stations by downtown St. Pete's City Hall is really crowded at that point, and I honestly believe if there's shorter headways, more people would end up using it. Right now, I use it because I take my bike off the Pinellas Trail and end up catching it near the Earth Fair area, 66 and First Avenue South, and take it in. And it's kind of annoying sometimes when the bike racks are full and I have to wait for another 15 minutes because sometimes it's actually like 17. And that just means more time for me that I have to spend on commuting to get to my workplace. I've also used First Avenue North and South when I'm driving to campus. I went to USF St. Pete. I had night classes there. I also had afternoon classes, so I've seen what it's like at different times of the day. And although the speed limit is 35, and some people might argue it's a little bit slower, that really doesn't add that much of a difference to someone's commute. It's maybe a couple minutes, but really that should be on the commuter themselves to arrive at the place on time. I just noticed that it's a lot safer with the bus lane that's there. People do drive a little more cautiously, and for the amount of people that are on the Sunrunner, that's a lot of cars that are taken off of the roads. So it's almost like the people who ride the Sunrunner are doing drivers a favor by having less congestion. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate having the Sunrunner available. I really think 3 buses would be fair, since the compromise was originally the 60-foot or the 80-foot buses. When I just see something that looks nice like the Sunrunner, I would want to ride it. And as far as how this grant works for your funding it, I think maybe if you did end up having more buses to where the costs get, or the headways get lower, I think you might be able to charge something like $10 for a day pass or something like that, and I think a lot of people would use it, because I certainly did when I was traveling in Kyoto. Could use the bus system there as many times as I wanted for $10 a day, so that might be a way to solve their way out of keeping it fare free. Cool. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And we have no more speakers, so we'll close public comment, but I do want to thank all who took the time to not only show up, but to wait for a while for the opportunity to speak. We really do appreciate your voice. We do have a motion and a second to approve this item. And before we go to that, I'll call on Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you to all of my colleagues. I had that, it's on.
Okay.
I had that emergency this morning, so thank you all for allowing me to appear virtual before I could get here. I appreciate that. I heard the conversation before you let me in, and it was some really good, there were some good ideas and some good conversation, but I just wanted to share a couple of things. First, to the youth that came up and spoke today, thank you. Because we often say that we don't hear from them, they're not involved. You took time out of your day, whether you're a student or someone who's a messenger in downtown St. Pete, you took time out of your day. And the last gentleman just gave me another visual picture of the utilization of the Sunrunner service. And I'm sure being a messenger, he actually ducks and dodges a lot of buses and cars and things throughout the day. So I want to thank you for coming here today. I want to say that if we all recall, some years ago, the governor at that time was Governor Scott, and we had the opportunity to be able to receive millions of dollars that would assist us in light rail as well as other ancillary mass transit, and that money was refused. For whatever reason, that money was refused. But as a result of that, it put us further and further behind the ball when it came to addressing mass transit. I think that we would be a lot farther along, even when we're looking at Brightline and how it will completely miss our community, but it will hit Tampa, and anyone that wants to utilize that will have to go over there to catch that. So we lost out on a lot of opportunity, which is why I believe there is so much angst and anxiety, because we are trying to play catch up with public transportation, but then we also still have this niche or this component that doesn't want to support the forward movement of public transportation. It's difficult to have it both ways. Many of us travel as elected officials. I just got back from Dallas. Their public transportation was $2.25, and you could catch it from the airport to the hotel where I was staying in downtown Dallas. Well, South downtown Dallas, because Dallas has 5 downtowns. Anytime I go out of town, I take mass transit because I want to see how it operates. And then I look at, oh, that's something we could do here, or maybe something we can't do here. But what I hear from some of the businesses that are moving here, and I'm sure some of you have heard it as well, is we don't have a good mass transit system because of the timeliness of the system. And so we're trying to provide something, because the Sunrunner, y'all, just doesn't support the Tampa Bay Rays. I heard a lot of that as I was driving, and there was a lot of inference on the Rays, and it does. It helps people get back and forth. But that's not the only thing that it does, and that's not the only route that it serves. So when we're talking about the Sunrunner, I think the conversation really should be more of a holistic conversation about what the Sunrunner does, because for the 5 years that all the planning and the projections went into place, it wasn't just solely focused on the Rays. It was focused on a service that can move persons expeditiously down a corridor. And it took into account moving persons from the beach community down into St. Pete and vice versa. And there are many people that want the service expanded into their communities. I would love to see us do that. I know when I first got on PSTA, Councilmember Deborah Fick Sanders and I, we were talking about the arterial supports for buses to come in from north and south to meet that Sunrunner east and west, because people, if you got to walk 5 or 6 blocks to catch the Sunrunner, are you going to do that, or are you going to catch another mode? So I think the conversation around maybe some smaller buses, that's something that I could get behind and support. Maybe we need to talk about that going forward in the future. I would also like to say that if you want to adjust the timing, you can do that. But even if you adjust it out to 20 minutes, I think you're going to see that even that may be difficult, because more and more people are taking advantage of public transportation. We are paying for communication services because those communication services is what avails the public to what we're doing. There is really no other way other than social media, flyers, newspapers, sides of buses, those of us that are elected talking about it in our venue settings to get the word out to individuals, because typically we don't have this many people coming to our PSTA meetings to find out about PSTA. So I think that's one of the ways that we have to do it, and we need to do it. So I don't have a problem. I heard Commissioner Oliver's request. I don't know if there's a time commitment that by which we have to make this decision in order to expend the funds without, some type of financial penalty or not making the mark based on what it is that we said we would do for the length of time of the contract. So I don't mind doing that, but I think the 15 minutes and trying to make sure we're providing the service that adjusts and handles the 15-minute desire that we already had in place. I heard a lot about reduced ridership. Some of the routes we may have reduced riderships, but it doesn't seem like it's playing in tandem with the fact that we have reduced ridership, but we're hearing from people that it's 20 minutes or it's longer because people are having to stand because it's full. And so I think we agreed that we're gonna look at the ridership. I hope the surveys that are going on right now will provide us with some additional data that'll lend to being able to address that. But for right now, what we're talking about in this particular item, the Sunrunner is being utilized for the way in which it was intended, and as a result of that, I think what the number we heard at our last meeting, 155,000 riders, somewhere in there. So it's doing what we asked for it to do. I would love to see the expansion of services in the Seminole and Dunedin and others. I look forward to having those conversations because we want to encourage that from your communities as well. I just took a wonderful tour of Seminole and visited the Parks and Rec Center. I went Saturday, by the way. And I could see where that could be utilized along Seminole Boulevard, 113 Doomy Road. I see where that could be utilized. The last thing I want to say, last two, I heard a lot of pushing on Catalyst. This is no pun intended to my friend down there, Commissioner Lotbala. But I heard a lot of push and pull about, we're using taxpayer money to pay these lobbyists and all of that. A lot of legislators, when they're finished with their service, that's who they go to work for, lobbying firms. And why do those lobbying firms bring them on board? Because they know how the government operates in Tallahassee. They have relationships. And yes, PSTA utilizes those as communication endeavors by which to ascertain funding from the state. It's not just PSTA. It's a number of organizations that do that. So I think it's unfair to call out Catalyst. I think Catalyst is doing the job that they're hired to do. I think it's unfair to call out Ron Pierce or Harry Glenn with his firm or any of them, because that is what they're called out to do. That's what they're being paid to do. It's just like if you pay for a service to have your wedding, or you pay for a service because you're advertising on the radio or television. You're paying for a service so that you can receive funds or support to provide additional services to the community. The last thing I want to say, and Chair, I do appreciate you indulging me because I wasn't here. The last thing I want to say is, yes, persons who don't support Sunrunner or mass transit, you are taxpayers. But there are also taxpayers who do support Sunrunner and mass transit. And so it's not just servicing one group. It is looking at effectiveness and efficiencies. And Commissioner Scott, you had some real good points and ideas on effectiveness and efficiencies. And so I do appreciate that. But those of us that sit up here, we pay taxes too. And so we are not just making decisions, or I am not just making decisions because I'm not having to also pay into and buy into those services. There are people, again, I will say, I received several emails on my county email site, several one-on-one conversations where there are people who support the Sunrunner. They support the expansion of the Sunrunner. And so I think I appreciate when you say that, but taxpayers support and don't support on various ends. And so I'm listening to them as well as listening to you. If the desire of this board is to table the item. I'm not sure what will come about additionally by tabling the item. So, if you don't mind, Mr. Oliver, because you were going in and out, can someone share with me, because it was going in and out, and I didn't hear the reasoning for wanting to table the item, so I apologize. If someone could say that again, just so it'll help me.
Explain what.
But I do appreciate you all indulging me to the additional time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he wanted to postpone the item to next meeting to allow Mr. Dayal to answer some of the questions that had been posed that he didn't have the statistics to answer today. But that motion is not on the floor. The motion on the floor is to approve.
Yes, I did hear that, and of course, I did hear where you said the maker of the motion will have to either rescind their motion. So the only question I have of you, Mr. Abishat, is there something relative to time that we would be outside of those boundaries should this item be tabled as it relates to the purchase of the buses and the effective delivery of them, and then the implementation of them into service? Because I heard talk about a reduced amount of time, we would get them sooner, actually, and then be able to put them into service sooner. Thank you all, I appreciate it.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'll answer the question in relation to time. So the only thing that in addition to whatever Abhishek has mentioned before, there is a situation where, one, if we wait a month, we will lose the 11-month production window with the manufacturer. It'll go back to 15 months. And number two is, as some board members have heard, when we purchase buses, there is a inflation rate referred to as the PPI, the Producer Price Index. And there is the potential that if we wait a month, that it could go up to a higher rate, which would mean that the bus would cost a certain percentage more than it did today. That rate is set by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and usually comes out each month.
Commissioner Lavella.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will be voting against this item, but I just wanted to respond to something my friend said, and I don't think she intended for it to be said, but just in case anybody misunderstood her, I do not work for any lobbyist, or never have, and I am probably too blunt to be a successful lobbyist if I were to go down that avenue of profession. So, thanks.
Commissioner Lavalla, no, I was saying no, I was asking no disrespect to you when I was saying that, and I wanted you to know I wasn't aiming at you. I was just talking in general about some other legislators. But I thank you for that, my friend.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe everything you said. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Seeing that there's no further request for discussion, could we please open the voting system? Now we have 13.
I'm a yes. My little thing is not coming up, so please forgive.
Oh, okay. Motion passes 7-6. Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 6C. PSTA's planner James Phillips and Debbie Laos, our CFO of the year, will present our final action item today to approve a disabled veterans free fare program as we've discussed over the last few months. Hi, Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. If you feel a need to stretch, feel free to do so while we go through this. As you recall, back in February, the USF students came to the board and respectfully requested that we look at providing free fares to our disabled veteran community. And today we're going to be talking about this action item. And since that time, as you know, we've met with the students a few times. We've been working internally on this. And I'm joined today by James Phillips, who is a transit planner, and he's going to provide an overview of a proposed program supporting this request. The action item that's before you today is to provide free rides to disabled veterans on our fixed routes starting November 10th. And with that, I will turn it over to James.
Thank you, Debbie. Also, in addition to being a transit planner here, I'm also a proud Army veteran, and I'm happy to go over this program with you all today. So as staff, we met, and with the assistance of the USF students, we determined to provide the best service for this program that the Flamingo cards would best be utilized for this. This will mimic special fare programs that are already in place and will be a smooth transitions for our riders that are already using it and also attract riders into the Flamingo system as well. This will also allow for accurate data reporting. Wanted to note that this would, there would be no personal or private information used in these reports. This is simply only tracking the usage. Tracking that usage will make finding partnerships easier as we move through this pilot program and test our assumptions with our projections of this program. And Debbie's going to go over the financial considerations.
Okay, thank you, James. Yes, after analysis, which we took a look at what we feel is our veteran population riding today, the percent of disabled veterans in the community, and looking at that, we're estimating about an $89,000 annual revenue loss just from the fares, because anyone riding today is paying a fare, whether it's through the TD program or full fares, et cetera. So what we want to do is take a look at what other opportunities we have, because I know Commissioner Flowers has provided us with some things. We've talked about looking at state and federal government for earmarks to help us with this, looking at non-traditional areas as well. We checked with other systems around the country that have veterans programs. So far, no one has been using any other sources. But you know PSTA, we never say never, and we are going to look at this. And I know a lot of you have been very supportive of not only looking at this for disabled veterans, but also for the veterans community at large. To do that, what we're estimating today, without all the data in place that the Flamingo program will help us with, is we're looking at probably over $400,000 annual revenue loss. That is why it's so important, at least to me, to have a period of time to gather the data, to look at it, determine what our revenue loss is or is not, and also provide data so that when we go to, whether it's your municipalities, whether it's to the federal, state government, not-for-profits, we can say what value it will be bringing and exactly what we need to be able to run this program, whether it's for this pilot period with disabled vets or for the veterans as a whole. So we have some next steps in here in the recommendation of doing. James and I are going to team up, so don't be surprised if we're calling on you to say, what can you do to help us, and also give us the connections that we need to be able to make this a cost-neutral program. So our action item before you today is we're recommending a program to allow disabled veterans to ride for free on our fixed routes starting November 10th. That will give us the time to actually market this program to our veteran community. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Latvala?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you both, especially you, James, for your service. And I have several questions. Where did you get the $89,000 loss of fare figure from?
Excellent question. We estimated our total veteran usage, took the percentage of veterans in the community receiving disability, applied that percentage, which is 22.92%, to come up with the population we feel will be using that. We took that times our average fare rate, which is 92 cents, and came up with an estimated cost of exactly $88,687. So I just rounded up to $89,000 estimated revenue loss.
So for the 400,000 figure that you mentioned, if all veterans were included,
All veteran usage, yes. 'cause
Does
right-
that, so that would include the number of anticipated veterans that would use this program?
Yes.
How do you get that number of expected veterans that would use this program?
I don't know if you want to talk to that one?
Sure, happy to. So, to your point, Commissioner, we looked at other systems and what their usage was, and we took an average of all of those other systems. They were seeing about 5% usage in their total ridership. So we took that 5% and applied it to our ridership numbers to get an estimate amount of what we would expect the veteran usage would be like.
Okay, and you would agree that there's roughly 75,000 veterans in Pinellas County? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you would think that 5% of, if this was expanded to all veterans, that roughly 5% of those veterans would use this program? If it was expanded to everybody?
That is my supposition. Go Pasco, they're using about 7% in their usage, which is statistically higher than the average. Other systems over in Polk County, they're only seeing about 3% usage.
And when you were here previously, you mentioned that there were other counties that opened it up to all veterans, and I believe Pasco and Polk were too. Is there any evidence that with the veterans that are using that program, that they have family members or spouses, kids, friends that are riding the bus with them that are paying, that could cause the ridership to go up?
There's no evidence that they track for that. They're just tracking just the veteran ridership.
In those counties, is the ridership going up?
Yes. It's hard because with COVID, but generally most agencies are seeing a rise in their ridership.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking is I intend to make a motion to include all veterans in this program. And I think that it would be a worthwhile expense. And I think that it's clear that we have the capacity to do this, and certainly the buses. And I do think that, including veterans, all veterans, such as yourself and your brothers and sisters that you served with, that, their family members could also ride with them, and we would be able to recoup some of the money that way.
That's a motion and second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll go to Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just two quick questions. I'm assuming this would have no fiscal impact for this year, so this would be just budgeted for fiscal year 2024? Okay. And do we know how this would affect TD? How many of these are in TD right now?
Excellent question. We really don't know at this point, and that's why I wanted to collect the data. As we've talked about, we're going to be conducting surveys through the community bus plan, and that should be able to help us through our questionnaires produce some veteran ridership profiles of who's riding the bus and what fare they're paying today. As you know, with the TD program, that's a program of last choice, meaning if there's something else that we can go to that's free, we would go to that first, which means then we lose the TD grant revenue as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll go to Commissioner Schulman and then Fig Sanders. And then to the side, sorry, Schulman. And,
We all just piled on.
And Commissioner Robinson, thank you for your service today. I know that you have another meeting that you cannot miss, and so.
I just say I know I won't be able to vote on this, but I would vote in support of, as I'm on my way out.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation, and I completely agree, and we talked about this in the prior committee meeting, the planning committee, and that unanimously passed. I do have a little bit of concern of the motion that's currently on. My original thought when this was first presented by the students was that we would probably go to all veterans. But I think that after learning more and listening more to how you're approaching it, I think starting with disabled veterans, understanding what those impacts are, understanding how we're going to process it and work through that and communicate. There's some things that we need to work out before we open it up to more. So I think this is a good first step with ultimately the goal of getting to all veterans. So I just want to be a little bit more cautious. So I won't be in support of the current motion, but I am in support of the original recommended item. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Fix Sanders.
Thank you, and I just wanted some clarification on that, because I know we did have extensive conversation in regards to going from disabled to all, and I think it is a true concurrence that we eventually do want to go to all veterans, especially with my interactions with veterans. So I would love to see that. So the motion on the floor is that if we open it up to all, their families will be paid writers, correct? Is that what I'm hearing? Yes. If we open it up to all veterans to increase the ridership, which is, if I'm understanding the purpose of the motion, is that their families would also ride, but they would be paid ridership. Would they be free as well?
No, that, I think what you had said or were alluding to, they would be paid. So
Okay.
you bring a veteran on, maybe who's not riding today,
Okay.
and their family would then be paying, that would maybe, you know, that you're getting new ridership that would then offset any revenue loss.
Okay, so how I look at that is we have a veteran that would ride for free and will possibly bring their family. Okay, but then we have a disabled veteran that more than likely would bring their family because they are disabled and may need assistance. So, okay, I just need some clarification on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Lavallo, in your motion, they still will go through the same process as it relates to the eligibility. I'm asking, so I support what you're saying, because I think whatever we could do for veterans, we should do. I'm like Councilmember Deborah Fix Sanders, my dad, my sisters and brothers. I'm the baby of 12, only 3 of us did not go into the military, because I wasn't getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for nobody. But I just want to make sure it was still the eligibility piece that they qualify.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And just for clarity, I was using families as an example. But my motion is just for veterans to have free fares, not their families.
Thank you. That was my question.
Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make this clear, too. We're not including those veterans that are disabled to the point where they have to use, or where they use the access a program. They're not included in this. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're looking at this for fixed route only.
Fixed route only? Is there a possibility of,
I like data-driven decisions, and of course, it costs us a significant amount of money that we're underwriting for paratransit access. So before I can opine on that, I would like to see the data over a period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, I'm certainly in favor of this type of a program, but I don't know how we're going to do the identification.
Would you like to
You're
talk
gonna-
about being a veteran?
Sure. So the idea would be that a customer would approach customer service and show proof that they are a veteran, be it they're disabled or DD-214, their VA card, anything short of a campaign hat, that they're a veteran, and that showed their sign of disability. And then that customer service person would then issue them the Flamingo card. That with a pass for a month, and then after a month they come back and get a new pass loaded on there. This is very similar to the TD bus patch program, which is why I said it would be an easy translation for people who are already doing it.
So the veteran would have to go to a service station and get a card.
Mm-hmm.
And we would not be charging for the Flamingo card like we normally would.
And the card would be good for a month?
Be good for a month, and then when that person comes back, it said, hey, it's me again, I'm here for my new pass. They don't have to show identification again, other than that it's that person. So all the extent of, it shouldn't be an extensive amount of identification, just a few things. But it would be an easy process the next month and so on and so forth.
As long as you don't think we'd have any problem with Share a Card program. I was involved very strongly in the veterans getting free tickets to the Rays baseball game. We stood in line, got our 2 tickets, and turned around and sold them to somebody for $5 apiece, by the thousands. And so the Rays had to change the whole program, so that you had to go in the computer, you had to register, you had to prove you were a veteran, and then you were the only one that got, and you had to show identification when you went to the baseball game.
That's a point well taken, and the one thing about the Flamingo card that's really good is you have a fare capping capability within the Flamingo card. So if you're riding on a regular basis, it will fare cap approximately halfway through the month, and the rest of your time is free. Anybody today could probably give their card to somebody else, but we also have, if I get on the bus as a well, you should probably get on the bus since you're the veteran. I just support them. James gets on the bus and he taps to come on, and he hands me the card to get on for free. Guess what? It won't work, because there's a certain time limit between taps, so that we don't have what they call passbacks, people trying to get on for free. So there may be some, misuse of the system. I'm not going to say there isn't, but we're trying to take precautions to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Commissioner Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I voted against the 3 buses because I thought there were too many unanswered questions and too many other options. I think the staff has done a great job in suggesting a pilot program where we could collect data and take that next step to all veterans. But I think that step is premature. I was on the planning committee with Commissioner Schulman, and there was discussion about all veterans, and there was discussion about how important it was to collect the data and do this in a phased way to eliminate any concerns like the ones you raised. So I'll be voting against this motion, but I'll certainly support the motion to do the study for the disabled veterans and then move on from there once we collect the data.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Saraki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick comment. First of all, I would like to thank Commissioner Latvala for taking the motion to the next step, because I lost an uncle in a war, and my father served in World War II, and I think this is very important for veterans in the Pinellas County area that they have this service. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you.
Maybe can I get this?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Debbie and James, for your presentation. As you all know, this started with the students from USF coming and suggesting this, and their proposal was for disabled veterans. But we are certainly in favor of more people riding the bus and having all veterans, all 75,000 if that's the number in Pinellas, that would be great. When trying to calculate the cost of a fare program like this, there's different ways to look at it. How many of the 75,000 are going to ride now that it's free is one number. But sort of the conservative, the only real dollar loss is people that are riding the bus today and paying, that suddenly will get a free, veterans that are riding today, on our system, that suddenly will getting a free ride, and right now they're paying for their ride. And, it's complicated to try to figure that out, since we don't have a survey, we haven't done a survey that says, are you a veteran or not? So we're James has done a good job of trying to estimate that as best based on Polk County and these other places. I think no matter how the PSTA board votes, I think we can probably implement the program either for all veterans or disabled veterans. I think the importance would be that we would not start this until next fiscal year, November 10th, so that we can, there are complexities with the state's transportation disadvantage program because of, assuming that some veterans do qualify for that, and if they're riding today, they might be already using that, and then we can jeopardize our grant funds that we get for the state for those that we're going to have to work with the state and figure this out this summer. So I just wanted to make that comment to keep with the November 10th start, however the vote is.
Thank you. Commissioner Latvala?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if I stated it or not, but my intent is to keep with the November 10th starting date on my motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm certainly supportive of disabled veterans, and generally speaking, I'm supportive of all veterans as well, riding for free. But I'd like to have a little better understanding of what that fiscal impact looks like for all veterans. So I'm not going to support that motion. I'm definitely supportive of disabled, with the caveat that once we have a better understanding, I may be supportive of it.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Scott and others who have mentioned that we would like to get to the point where we are offering free fares for all veterans. And I know that we can get there, but this has been created to start with disabled veterans. And I think there is valuable information that can be collected from this as a pilot, if we want to consider it that way, that will inform us on how to scale it to reach all veterans in the best way possible. So I'll vote against this, what's currently been proposed, but I would certainly support moving forward with the program for disabled veterans as a great start. And with that, we have a motion and a second. And we will go to public comment before we vote. We have one card that is from Stephen Brown. Sir, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you could approach the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Thanks, everyone. I am that USF student, if you guys don't remember me. My name's Stephen Brown. I'm a political science major at the University of South Florida and under direction of Dr. Judith Ann McLaughlin, who I know some of you have been familiar with. I started this research project to expand access to public transportation. I'm a disabled veteran of the United States Navy. I can't say personally that I use any kind of public transportation. I'm fortunate in that factor because I kind of live in the middle of the peninsula, so it doesn't really work for me. But I think that this is a great opportunity for us to show other counties as well, what we can do with this. And hopefully, I've received some support from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna and State Representative Cross, who I know gave you guys a letter of support, which she wanted right here. I don't know if you're going to do that, but to maybe take this up to Tallahassee, right, which would be awesome. But starting here is a great thing. I'm glad that you guys are supportive of all this, especially, my initial recommendation. If I ask for a piece and you want to give me the whole pie, I'm happy with that. I know there's always the bottom line, right? And I don't want this to be like a buzz phrase because, I talked to Debbie about it, but you really can't put a dollar value on saving a guy's life because you're getting him to Bay Pines or getting a homeless vet off the street. I mean, you could try. Your financial review committee can try, but we all know that, I think. So I really want to thank you guys for all the work that you've put in. I don't know about the back end, and if I can, shout out James, give that guy a raise or something, or an award. He deserves it. He's been my communique. I want to thank Commissioner Peters for pushing me to come here and speak to you guys initially, to Mr. Latvala for talking to me about this, and Brad, I know we talked after the last meeting, so I just want to really say thanks. We joked about the speed of government and how slow and molasses-like things can be, but we're 2 months. And this is already on the floor. So I'm really happy with this. I know the community is really happy with this. I also wanted to show you guys something, if I could just flex for a moment, but same research I presented you won first place in the USF undergrad research conference at USF. That was out of 50 submissions. Also, I know I'm coming up on time here, we're getting published in the Florida Political Science Association's journal for this, as well as the American Political Science, which is a peer-reviewed journal. We're going to take this thing all the way, and this is just the beginning for me. You know, I just moved here, so I work in the veteran community all the time. I'm looking to do more. So if you guys want to talk to me afterwards, I'll stay around to, you know, shake hands and rub elbows, and if I didn't mention you for thanks, you can pick a fight with me in the parking lot.
Thank you.
I'll call Judith so she can give you an A. All right.
Chair
All right.
Driscoll, if I may make a suggestion, perhaps, because I think there's so much enthusiasm that the board has brought to this subject matter, and our recommendation is for the disabled veterans starting November 10th. But to be able to put it in a way that we know that we're coming back to the items where for the support for all veterans is to say 6 months into the program, that we come back to the board with the data, because we'll be in the budget season for the following year, so that you have a date specific that next March or April that we come to you and say, here's the data, here's the implications, let's evaluate it for the following fiscal year. Does that sound reasonable?
It sounds fantastic to me, but I can't make the motion, so thank you for the suggestion. Commissioner Oliver.
Since I struck out the first time with my knowledge of Robert's rules, can a substitute motion be made at this point with Commissioner Latvella's approval to do essentially what Debbie has suggested?
So there's two ways that you can make a substitute or amended motion. You can either get the maker of the motion to agree, or you can make an amended motion and have somebody else second that, and then at that point, that motion.
Well, let me try first. Will you agree?
No, sir.
All right, then I'll make an amended motion to essentially recommend the program to allow disabled veterans, as you see in the rest of the action item, with an understanding that this will be revisited in 6 months during budget season. We don't have to put that in, to discuss expanding the program to all veterans.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment, sorry.
The amended motion.
The amended motion. Oh, we've been going a while now. Did you get that? Oh, Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, just for clarification, if that motion were to fail, can we still bring up the original motion that was brought up?
Yes, if this motion fails, the original motion is back on the floor.
Okay, because, you know, just my thought, we give free rides to students. I believe Commissioner Flowers mentioned we give free rides to teachers. We don't. No teachers.
I thought teachers and students from
Yes.
Pinellas County
Teachers?
Schools.
I apologize.
Okay, so we're.
But it's not free. Pinellas County Schools pay.
Well, what I mean is they ain't paying.
We don't charge fair to the riders, but they do pay, so it's.
You're right, everybody
It's a
pays.
paid
Somebody pays.
program.
Okay, okay, I just want to make clear. Okay, I just don't believe that the impact's going to be as bad as we think it is, and I think Commissioner Latvella is on target, that people may start riding and bring other family members that could bring in other revenue, and so, I was in favor of the first motion, I'm not in favor of this amended motion.
All right, Commissioner Latvala.
I too will be voting against this motion. There's no reason why, no offense to Pasco County, but there's no reason why Pasco County or Polk County should be any better than we are when it comes to our veterans community. I think our county is better than both of those counties. I think we have the best county in not only the Tampa Bay area, but the state of Florida. And so I think we should, You know, we give tourists that spend $500 a night on the beach free rides. We give homeless people in St. Pete free rides, teachers free rides. I think people that defend our country should be at the top of the list of people that deserve free rides on our buses.
Thank you. Commissioner Fig Sanders.
I pushed my button, then I turned it off, but then I have to push it again. I don't think that the intent is to not give veterans free rides. I think the intent is what I have seen my entire time being on the board is that a lot of the decisions that we've made have been data-driven. And right now, we have no data. We have guesstimations as to what that will cost. Again, like I said, the mother of a Marine, the wife and daughter and niece of colonels in the Army and Navy, my family and I personally have been impacted by every branch of the military. We want to open it up to everybody, but we just spent, almost 2 hours talking about being fiscally responsible in regards to something else. So I want to open it up for everybody, veterans and the spouses of veterans, because we don't give them enough credit for serving this community, I'd like to say. You know, you're right, you know, so it's not a downplay as to all veterans. I just want to see more data. That's just speaking for Deborah Fig Sanders on that. So I am going to support the motion on the floor because I would love for us to utilize, because the conversation may even go further with all veterans on that. But just to vote on a fiscal decision on the fly, I will support the second one to have additional information brought back with us, to us. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Roger.
Just a point that making me think, to Commissioner LaValle's point, I don't believe, and James, you can correct me, but I don't believe either Polk or Pasco has a transportation disadvantaged bus pass like Pinellas has had forever, where we give thousands of daily rides to low income, based on income. So that includes probably veterans, some veterans, and a whole bunch of other people too. That is how a lot of people ride the bus today, is by qualifying for a transportation disadvantaged $11 a month bus pass. And that program is funded by the state. It has lots of different rules and regulations that I believe we can figure out a way to get whatever we needed done by November 10th, but I think that's just the open question of how much is this really going to cost us? We need to do that analysis. And Polk and Pasco, with their percentages that James recorded that they are doing, they don't have a low-income bus pass. So this I don't know what other kinds of programs they have, but they don't already give a very discounted ride to so many people, like Pinellas does.
Commissioner LaValle.
My question is for Brad. Does Polk and Pasco give free bus rides to veterans?
They do, but they
That's essentially the point I was making. So essentially, they are more veteran-friendly than PSTA is. You cannot argue that.
I would argue we are very friendly to low-income veterans and to all low-income. Maybe high-income veterans we're not as friendly as Pasco and Polk. You are right.
Thank you, and I appreciate that we are making the effort to move in the right direction, and perhaps we don't go straight to 100%, but this step towards achieving that is an important one, and it'll give us the data, the information, and the numbers that we need to make a smart decision regarding anything that needs to be adjusted when we do scale this up. So thank you to everyone who's worked on this. We do have a motion on the floor. There has been a second. We do have some commissioners that have to leave very soon because we are running very far behind. So seeing that there is no further request for discussion, please open the voting system. Commissioners, please enter your.
No, this is the wrong motion. It needs to be. Commissioner Oliver's motion, Councilmember Oliver's motion.
It has to be verbal.
Okay.
This was verbal, because it's not in there.
All right, does anyone need the amended motion to be restated? Are we good? All right, could we do,
A roll call?
yeah, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Maureen, could you call out the names? And have them vote?
And tally it.
No.
Oliver?
Yes.
What is this motion we're voting on?
Oh, my goodness.
I thought we were voting
Sir,
on
I-
the motion.
Yes, we are.
We were voting on
Voting on his motion, not my motion.
What is your motion?
The motion is to open the program to disabled veterans and then in 6 months to revisit for all veterans.
What happened to Mr. Latvala?
It's I had an amended motion, second. So if that motion fails, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if that motion fails, the original motion, Vala's motion, is then voted on. So if the amended motion fails, it goes back to his original motion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to oblige. And could we continue, could we,
I want all veterans, yes.
He voted no. He voted no.
He voted no.
He voted no.
Yes. Okay, yes.
Saraki?
No.
You skipped Driscoll.
Sorry.
yeah, yes.
Flowers?
No.
Cox?
No.
Peters?
No.
Reed? No. Scott?
Yes.
Thank you.
Could you announce the results, please?
Oh, wait a minute, I apologize.
I was a no.
Yes.
Yes.
It quite obviously did not pass.
She was a yes.
Yes. Then no. No.
I was a no.
He was a no.
No.
I was a no.
This
No.
isn't hard. This isn't
No.
hard.
She shouldn't have put that motion in the system yet.
I think it fails.
So we're tied, 5 no, 5 yes.
No,
Right.
no, there's not.
It can't be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
4 yeses.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
It's 12 people. You can't have.
Hi, yeah. I'd like to suggest that we just revote and do a show of hands, please.
Thank you.
We did have Commissioner Fix Sanders was here and did vote,
Yes.
and now she left. So we'll just have to vote again, but.
I mean,
you
Even if
get
it's
everything.
5 to 5, it didn't pass. huh?
They didn't have the count correct.
Do the hands. I agree with you, Chair. Do the hands, babe.
Everybody in favor? Voting yes, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4.
we're gonna fix this.
Favor of no? 1, 2,
More than 4.
there's 2 there.
7.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
How did you get 5 to 5?
Motion does not pass.
All right,
So
thank
go
you.
back to
The
the original motion.
The original motion.
motion fails. We go to the original motion. Does anyone need to have the original motion restated?
It's Mr. Latvala's motion.
It is. Do you understand what it is?
All veterans.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, good. Seeing that there's no further request for discussion, could we please open the voting system?
Do you have that on the computer? How did you have that?
Yes.
It should be on
It's coming, babe. It's coming, Mr. Bennett. Did it pull up for you?
Yeah.
Mr. Bennett, it didn't pull up for you?
Well, my computer says only allow disabled veterans. And that's not what Mr. Latvala's motion was.
That's the title of the 6C.
So that's why I knew you would not have it on the computer. You didn't have the other one on the computer. So we have to vote by hand.
No, it's,
That's
look,
the agenda.
it's the, agenda item, I made the motion. My motion.
different than what that says, but it's agenda item 6 is what you're voting on. Just the title of the agenda.
So if I vote no, then we'll go back to Mr. LaValle.
No, that's where we're at now.
We are on, we're on, we're on Mr. Levitt. We are
You're in
on.
favor of all veterans. then you vote yes. That's what we are right now. It's your fault.
I know.
You're not allowed to go to any Memorial Day ceremonies.
So, so the motion was to allow access for disabled veterans.
No, all veterans.
All veterans.
If you want all veterans, hit green. If you don't want all veterans,
Well, I can't hit green if it says only disabled veterans on my piece of paper in front of me.
Serenity
Can I
now,
try to-
Serenity.
That's just the agenda item title. That's not the motion. The motion is
Is what you
is
heard.
Commissioner Latvala motion for all veterans to ride free.
There we go.
Excellent. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Did you get 10 votes on that? 11? 1.
Madam Chair, I know we're running very late. I would
We
like
really
Debbie-
are.
I know would like Debbie just to make a quick comment about this issue that's coming up with the van pool, so that we're not surprised.
Right, do you want me to go through slides or just a couple
No,
comments?
just say, just tell them that we won. We won a van pool program.
We won the contest. BARDA, as you know, is dissolving, and one of the programs, or the program that they run, is the Van Pool program, which covers 6 counties in the region. And FDOT has taken this last 6 months to evaluate who will be running the Van Pool program. It could have been FDOT itself, HART, or PSTA. And they reached out late last week to say PSTA will be running the Van Pool program. Now, our esteemed general counsel is going to be working with FDOT on a mechanism to make this happen, because right now, we can only operate service that just touches Pinellas County. So this is going to be an excellent way of adding another mobility option to our toolbox, if you will. And it's a turnkey operation, so it will cost nothing to PSTA, and yet it will bring additional federal funds to the region. So it's a very positive. I'm very proud that they chose PSTA to do this program, because FDOT more than anything else wanted this regional program to continue on. So,
As the Secretary of Treasury, I would.
Thank you.
I wanted Debbie to say that because this Friday is the T-BARTA meeting where FDOT is going to announce this, and I didn't want.
no surprise.
Thank you. Any questions for Debbie before we move on? All right. Thank you very much for that. We'll go to reports and correspondence along with future meeting subjects, and I would highly recommend that we keep this quick or defer, move anything to the next meeting, since these are not items we'll be voting on.
The items are in your packet, and I apologize, there was a group of people sitting here that were part of the FDOT inaugural Transit Emergent Leadership Experience from other transit agencies across the state, that they are experiencing a week at PSTA. These folks from different transit agencies spend a week here, a week at Palm Tran in Palm Beach County, and FDOT. It's an FDOT-sponsored program. They were there. Now they're actually touring the Sunrunner, so they left.
Oh,
But
all right.
glad they were here.
Well, they got to experience quite a meeting today
They
while they
did.
were waiting.
They
It's
did.
too bad we missed them. Anything else that you wanted to point out? Great. Any other business to discuss, or do we have board member comments? We've had so many today. It's been wonderful. All right, thank you. Our next meeting is going to be June 28th, 2023 at 9 a.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You won't have me next meeting.
No?
Go out in front of my car
Yeah.
here in my place.
Oh, yeah.
I have T-Barter in the morning, so it'll have to be, T-Barter will probably open about 1. So you can call me anytime in the afternoon. And the reason I'm saying 1 is because we start at 9:30, but we'll be wrapping things up.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, call me after 1. I'm happy to chitter chat.